wanted to have greater flexibility and choice in meeting girls. There were guys who were uptight and set in their ways, like Cliff of Cliff's List, who couldn't even handle having a nickname like everybody else. They tended to gather as much knowledge as they could, but had trouble making even the smallest behavioral change. And then there were people like Papa, approach machines, who compensated for a lack of social skills with a lack of social fears. Approach machines tended to improve the fastest, simply by following the flowchart of material they were given. But once they ran out of material, they floundered. And this was going to be Papa's challenge. He was a soft-spoken Chinese pre-law student. He wore a checked button-down shirt and jeans that were a size too large. They always seemed to arrive in a checked button-down shirt and oversized jeans. And they always left in a loud, shiny shirt, tight black synthetic pants, silver rings, and sunglasses pushed up on their heads. It was the player uniform, designed to convey sexuality, which was evidently synonymous with cheesiness. Mystery and I sat down with Papa at a cafe and asked the usual questions. What's your score? What would you like it to be? What are your sticking points? Well, I used to be the social chair of my fraternity, he began, and I come from a lot of money. My father is the president of a major university. Let me cut you off right there, I said. You're qualifying yourself to us. Instead of gaining our admiration, all you're doing is displaying lower status. A rich man doesn't have to tell you he's rich. Papa nodded stupidly. His head seemed to be surrounded by a dense, invisible fog, which made his reaction time just a little slower than most people's. It gave the impression that he wasn't all there. Is it okay if I record everything you're saying? Papa asked, struggling to pull a small digital recorder out of his pocket. There are certain bad habits we've groomed our whole life, from personality flaws to fashion faux pas, and it has been the role of parents and friends, outside of some minor tweaking, to reinforce the belief that we're okay just as we are. But it's not enough to just be yourself. You have to be your best self. And that's a tall order if you haven't found your best self yet. That's why the workshops were so life-transforming. We told each student the first impression he made. We weren't afraid of hurting his feelings. We corrected his every gesture, phrase, and item of clothing, because we knew he wasn't living up to his potential. None of us is. We get stuck in old thought and behavior patterns that may have been effective when we were 12 months or 12 years old, but now only serve to hold us back. And while those around us may have no problem correcting our minor flaws, they let the big ones slide, because it would mean attacking who we are. But who are we, really? Just a bundle of good genes and bad genes, mixed with good habits and bad habits. And since there's no gene for coolness or confidence, then being uncool and unconfident are just bad habits, which can be changed with enough guidance and willpower. And that was Papa's asset, willpower. He was an only child and used to taking any measure necessary to get what he wanted. I demonstrated some of my best routines on him, the jealous girlfriend opener, the best friends test, the cube, and a new piece I'd made up involving C-shaped smiles, U-shaped smiles, and the personality characteristics each conveyed. Papa recorded every word on his digital recorder. He would later transcribe them, memorize them, and ultimately use my exact words to pick up Paris Hilton. I should have recognized the signals then. I should have realized what was going on. This wasn't teaching, it was cloning. Mystery and I were traveling around the world, making miniature versions of ourselves, and we would soon pay for it. Every piece of material we gave Papa, he used. Every error we pointed out, he corrected instantly. With each successful set, he seemed to grow an inch taller. Instead of summer school, he told me, he'd spent 3 months working on speed seduction skills. But until this workshop, he'd never seen real puas in the field before. On our last day with Papa, we went to a club called Government. I pushed him into sets and watched him repeat, like a robot, the openers, routines, and negs Mystery and I had taught him. And women were responding to him now. It was amazing how effective just a few simple lines could be, and it was also a little depressing. The first thing aspiring stand-up comics do is develop a tight 5-minute routine that can win over any audience. But after seeing hundreds of rooms fill with laughter on cue at the exact same points, they begin to lose respect for their audience for being so easily manipulated. Being a successful pickup artist meant risking the same side effect. When Papa left to get some sleep before his flight home, Mystery and I stayed at the club to continue sarging. Grimble had recently given me the idea of taking all the scraps of paper with phone numbers I'd collected and putting them under glass on a coffee table for decoration. But as I was sharing the idea with Mystery, he cut me off. Proximity alert system, he announced. When women stand near a man, but facing away from him, especially when there's no real reason for them to be hanging out in that particular spot, it trips what Mystery calls the proximity alert system. It means they're interested. They want to be opened. Mystery wheeled around and started talking to a delicate blonde in a strapless dress and a muscular brunette in a do-rag. When he introduced me, he told them I was an amazing illusionist. We'd been winging together for months now, so I knew just what to do. Fake them out with a couple of the practical jokes and pseudo-magic tricks I'd learned in elementary school. In the field, one quickly learns that everything that was funny at age 10 is funny all over again. Mystery had brought along a video camera, so he began taping the interaction. The girls didn't seem to mind. As he isolated the brunette, I talked to the blonde. Her name was Caroline. Her friend was Carly. Caroline lived in the suburbs with her family. Her goal in life was to be a nurse, but she was currently working at Hooters, despite having breasts the size of sweet tarts and a shy, withdrawn personality. From 2 feet away, Caroline's face seemed alabaster. From 1 foot away, I noticed it was dappled with pinprick freckles. One of her teeth was crooked. She had a red mark on the skin over her collarbone, as if she'd been itching it. She smelled like cotton. She'd gotten a manicure in the last 24 hours. She weighed no more than 100 pounds. Her favorite color was probably pink. I observed all these things as my mouth moved, reciting the routines I'd told to hundreds of girls before. What was different about Caroline was that the routines didn't seem to be working. I just couldn't reach what I call the hook point, which is when a woman you've approached decides she enjoys your company and doesn't want you to leave. Though I stood just a foot away from Caroline, a mile-wide chasm separated us. After watching the movie Boiler Room, about ruthless, cold-calling stockbrokers, Mystery had decided that phone numbers were wood. In other words, they were useless. Our new strategy was to no longer try to call a girl for a date, but to take her on a date right away, an instant date, to a nearby bar or restaurant. Changing venues quickly became a key piece in the pickup game. It created a sense of distorted time. If you went to 3 places with a group you just met, by the end of the night, it felt as if you'd all known each other forever. Why don't we all grab a bite to eat? Mystery suggested. We walked to a diner nearby, arm in arm with our instant dates. During the meal, everything suddenly clicked in the group. Carly felt comfortable enough to unleash her biting wit, and Caroline began to radiate empathy and warmth. We didn't need any routines or tactics. We all just made fun of ourselves and each other. Afterward, Carly invited us to call a cab from her apartment around the corner. She had just moved in, and the rooms were bare of furniture, so Mr. and I sat on the floor. We didn't call a cab, and the girls didn't remind us to, which we took as an IOI. Carly soon left the room with Mystery, giving Caroline tacit permission to fool around with me. As we wrapped ourselves around each other, the chasm that had separated us in the bar disappeared. Caroline's touch was soft and gentle, her body frail and forgiving. Now I understood why it had been so difficult to get rapport with her when we'd first met. She didn't communicate with words. She communicated with feelings. She'd make a great nurse. After Caroline brought in some blankets to make the hardwood floor a little more comfortable, I went down on her. I stacked her orgasms as Steve P. had taught me, until it seemed like her body was melting into the ground. But when I reached for a condom afterward, I heard the 4 words that had taken the place of "let's just be friends" in my life. But I just met you. It was a much sweeter sound, and there was no reason to push for sex with Caroline. I knew I'd see her again. She lay on my shoulder, and we enjoyed the afterglow. She was 19, she said, and hadn't had sex in almost 2 years. The reason? She had a 1-year-old child at home. His name was Carter, and she was determined not to be another neglectful teenage mother. This was the first time she'd been apart from him for a weekend. When we awoke the next afternoon, awkward from the passion of the night before, Caroline suggested having breakfast at a restaurant next door. In the days that followed, I must have watched Mystery's video of that breakfast 100 times. At the diner the night before, Caroline's blue eyes were flat and distant. But at breakfast in the morning, They glittered and danced when she looked at me. Whenever I made a joke, even one that wasn't funny, a broad smile spread across her face. Something inside her heart had opened. It was, I realized, the first time I'd made a real emotional connection with a woman since I'd started picking them up. I don't have a particular type of girl I'm attracted to, the way some guys are Asian fetishists or Jessica Simpson fetishists. But of all the women in the world, the last type I ever thought I'd fall for would be a 19-year-old single mom who waited tables at Hooters. But the great thing about the heart is that it has no master, despite what reason may think. When we returned home, Mystery and I loaded the footage of Carly and Caroline into Mystery's computer and proceeded to spend the next 6 hours self-indulgently editing it into a 6-minute video. When we finished, I called Caroline and she picked us up that evening. After dinner, we brought Carly and Caroline back to Mystery's house. As she watched the video, Caroline couldn't stop smiling. I brought her into number 9's room afterward, and we lay on the bed and slowly undressed each other. Her body trembled with so much emotion that it seemed to dissipate beneath me. It felt like making love to a cloud. When she came, she didn't make a sound. As we lay together afterward, Caroline rolled away from me. She stared at the wall and grew distant. I knew what she was thinking. When I asked her about it, she burst into tears. "I gave it up too fast," she sobbed. "Now I'm never going to see you again." They were such sweet words because they were so honest. I slid my arm under her and placed her head on my shoulder. I told her, first of all, that every passionate relationship I've ever had began passionately. It was a line I learned from Mystery, but I did believe it. Second, I told her that maybe she shouldn't have, but she wanted to, and needed to. It was a line I learned from Ross Jeffries, but I did believe it. Third, I told her that I was more mature than a lot of the people she'd been with before, so not to judge me by her past experiences. It was a line I learned from David D'Angelo, but I did believe it. Finally, I told her that I'd be sad if I never saw her again. It wasn't a line. When we finally emerged into the front room, we found Carly and Mystery wrapped around each other in a blanket. Caroline and I spooned on the couch next to them, and together we watched an episode of The Osbournes on Mystery's computer, each basking in our own post-coital glow. It was a beautiful moment, and it wouldn't last. Chapter 5. There is nothing more bonding than successfully picking up girls together. It is the basis for a great friendship, because afterward, when the girls are gone, you can finally give each other the high five that you've been holding back since you met them. It is the sweetest high five in the world. It's not just the sound of skin hitting skin. It's the sound of brotherhood. "You know what's so fucked up?" Mystery said. "I feel so bad, and then a girl sleeps with me and likes me, and bam, I'm on top of the world again." Smack. "So?" Mystery asked. "So? Are you ready to commit to this lifestyle?" "I thought I was committed." "No, for life. It's in your blood now. You and me, we have to challenge each other. Of all the guys I've met, you're my only competition. No one else has the chance to reach the throne except you." When I was a teenager, I'd lie awake in bed, praying to God, "Please don't let me die before having sex. I just want to see what it feels like." But now, I had a different dream. At night, I'd lie in bed and ask God to just let me have the opportunity to be a father before I die. I've always lived for experience, traveling, learning new skills, meeting new people. But having a child is the ultimate experience. It's what we're here for. And despite my rakish behavior, I hadn't lost sight of that. Yet, at the same time, living for experiences also means wanting the novelty and adventure of dating different women. I can't imagine ever choosing one person for life. It's not that I'm scared of commitment. It's that I'm scared of arguing with someone I love over whose turn it is to do the dishes, of losing the desire to have sex with a woman lying next to me every night, of taking a back seat in her heart to our children, of resenting someone for limiting my freedom to be selfish. This pickup thing had never been about sowing my wild oats. My oats are always going to be wild, and that's not necessarily something I relish. I'm screwing up my chances of being a cool dad. If I'd married my first girlfriend and had kids with her, they'd be, say, 8 and 10 now. and I'd be an excellent father, able to relate to them on nearly every level. But it's too late for me now. By the time my kids are 10, I'll be well into my 40s. I'll be so out of touch, they'll make fun of my taste in music and beat me at arm wrestling. And now, I was really going to screw up my chances of getting married. I was about to brand myself a player for life. An hour later, Mystery and I were outside Fine Line Tattoo on Kingston Road. I was smarter than this, I thought. But it's easy to get caught up in the moment, in the hand slap, in the brotherhood. I turned the handle of the door and pushed. It didn't open. Though it was 3 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, the shop was closed. Damn, Mystery said. Let's find somewhere else. I'm not a superstitious person, but when I'm on the fence about an idea, it only takes a slight draft to push me in either direction. I can't go through with this, I said. What's wrong? I have problems with commitment. I don't think I can even commit to a tattoo that signifies a lack of commitment. My neurotic nature had saved me for once. The next night, Caroline drove to Mystery's house, and we all went out for sushi. Where's Carly? Mystery asked. Caroline flushed and looked into her tea. She, couldn't make it, she said. She says hi, though. I could see Mystery's body language change. He slumped in his chair and pressed further. Did she say why? Is there a problem? Well, Caroline said, she's with her boyfriend. Mystery's face went pale. And she wouldn't come? Carly said you and she were very different anyway. Mystery went quiet. He didn't speak for another 10 minutes. Whenever we asked a question to draw him out, he responded monosyllabically. It wasn't that he loved Carly. He just hated rejection. He was experiencing the downside of seducing a woman with a boyfriend. She usually went back to him afterward. And seeing Caroline and I enjoying each other's company so much only rubbed it in. I'm the world's greatest pickup artist, he grumbled in my direction. How come I don't have a girlfriend? Well, maybe because you're the world's greatest pickup artist. After a long period of silence, Mystery asked Caroline to drive him to the strip club where his ex-girlfriend Patricia worked. She dropped him off in the parking lot and then took me to spend the night at the house in the suburbs where she lived with her mother, sister, and brother. It would be my first time meeting her family. Her mother greeted us at the door. In her arms was a crying baby, my teenage girlfriend's baby. Do you want to hold him? Caroline asked. I suppose the stereotypical reaction would be to say that I was scared, that reality sunk in, that I wanted to get out of there. But I didn't. I wanted to hold him. It was kind of cool. This was what I got into the game for. To have these kinds of adventures. To hold a baby in my arms for the first time and wonder, what does his mother expect of me? Chapter 6. While I was playing daddy with Caroline, Mystery was spiraling. Dropping him off at the strip club was a bad move. Seeing Patricia had fucked him up. Not only would she not take him back, but she also told him that she'd started dating other people. She's been working out 3 hours a day, he said over the phone. She lost 15 pounds, and her ass is a 10, dude. The things a chick will do when she's angry. Damn. Don't think about how good she looks, I advised. Look for the flaws and blow those up in your mind. It'll make it easier. I know that intellectually, but emotionally I'm fucked up. I feel like I'm being raked over coals. It all came crashing down on me when I saw her again. That hot body, the tan lines. She was the hottest stripper in the place, and I can't have her. Carly's back with her boyfriend, and I'm beat from trying to make my new place livable. For what? Dude, you're a pickup artist. There are hundreds more just like Patricia out there, and you can get them in a night. I'm not a pickup artist. I'm a lover. I love women. I swear, I don't even think about threesomes anymore. I would be so happy to settle for Patricia now. I've got Patricia withdrawal on the mind. I miss her every minute of the day. Mystery had hardly thought about Patricia or talked about her until she rejected him. Now he was obsessed. His own theories on attraction had come back to slap him in the face. Patricia was doing a takeaway. But for her, it wasn't a technique. It was for real. As a magician used to exploiting the gullibility of others, Mystery had no patience with anything spiritual or supernatural. His religion was Darwin. Love to him was simply an evolutionary impulse that enabled human beings to fulfill their two primary objectives, to survive and replicate. He called that impulse pair bonding. It's strange how strong pair bonding is, he said. I feel so alone now. I'll tell you what, we'll pick you up tomorrow and you can play in the suburbs with us. It'll cheer you up. Caroline and I put Carter in his stroller and pushed him around the block to a park. As I sat down on the bench, I thought about what a pathetic couple of pickup artists Mystery and I were. Kids around the world thought we were in hot tubs, surrounded by bikini-clad models. Instead, he was alone in his apartment, probably crying and watching lesbian porn, and I was in the suburbs, pushing a baby around in a stroller. In the morning, Caroline and I fetched Mystery from the city. He hadn't shaved since I'd last seen him, and thin patches of stubble dappled his baby white skin. He wore a gray t-shirt that hung loosely over faded jeans. Just make sure your family doesn't ask me to do any magic tricks for them, he told Caroline. Yet, that night, when Caroline's mother asked him what he did for work, Mystery launched into a spectacular performance. He introduced each illusion, mind-reading, bottle levitating, self-levitating, sleights of hand, with 10 minutes of patter and panache that put every other illusionist I'd seen to shame. He charmed everyone in the room. Caroline's mom was flabbergasted. Her younger sister was attracted, and her brother wanted to learn how to levitate chalk to freak out his teachers. In that moment, I realized that Mystery actually had the skills to achieve his dream of being a superstar daredevil illusionist. After Caroline's family turned in for the night, Mystery asked her if she had any sleeping pills. All we have is Tylenol number 3, which has codeine, Caroline told him. That'll work, Mystery said. Just give me the whole bottle. I have a high tolerance. Chapter 7. The next morning, Mystery lay slumped in the back seat of Caroline's car, wrapped in a blanket and shrouded by a hat pulled low over his eyes, still apparently knocked out from the 4 Tylenol he'd swallowed the night before. Beyond asking us to drop him off at his family's condo, he didn't say a word, which was rare for him. We parked and took the elevator to his sister's apartment on the 20th floor. It was a cluttered 2-bedroom hovel crammed with people. Mystery's mother, a Zoftig German woman, sat on a beat-up flower-patterned sofa chair. His sister, Martina, her 2 children, and her husband, Gary, were crammed into a couch next to her. Mystery's father was shut up in his apartment, 4 floors above them, sick with liver disease from a lifetime of drinking. Hey, how come you don't have a girl with you? Mystery's 13-year-old niece, Shaolin, chided him. She knew all about his girls. He often used his nieces as a routine to convey his vulnerable paternal side to women. He truly loved his nieces and seemed to come back to life a little when he saw them. Mystery's brother-in-law, Gary, played us some pop ballads he had composed. The best of these was a song called Casanova's Child, which Mystery sang along with at a near-deafening volume. He seemed to identify with the title character. Being at home was slightly awkward for Mystery. His father, he had often told me in the past, was an alcoholic German immigrant who verbally and physically abused him and his mother. His brother, who was 14 years older than him, was gay, and his mother blamed herself for smothering his brother with love to make up for her husband's abuse. So, to compensate, she was emotionally distant from Mystery. When he was still a virgin, at age 21, he began to worry that maybe he was gay. So, in a bout of depression, he began formulating what would become the Mystery Method, dedicating his life to pursuing the love he never received from his parents. Caroline and I left his house after another half hour. The girls chased us all the way to the elevator bank, laughing and screaming, followed by Mystery. Suddenly, a door swung open, and a man in a clerical collar gave the girls a steely, condescending stare. You shouldn't be making so much noise in the hallway, he said. Mystery turned crimson. What are you going to do about it? He asked. Because I think we should. These are young girls. They're having fun. Well, the Reverend said, they can have fun in a place where they're not disturbing other residents. I'll tell you what, Mystery snapped. I'm going to get a knife, and we'll find out just who exactly should be in the hall when I get back. Mystery marched back to the house as the rest of us exchanged concerned looks. The Reverend slammed the door shut, and Caroline and I slipped away in the confusion. I didn't really want to go back to Caroline's. I've lived in cities my whole life. I hate the suburbs. My biggest fear is being bored or boring. Weekend nights weren't made for sitting around watching videos from Blockbuster. But Caroline couldn't stay in Toronto. She didn't want to be away from her son. She didn't want to be a typical teenage mother. So while Caroline played with Carter the next day, I checked my email. Mystery and I had posted a field report about Carly and Caroline a few days earlier, and my inbox was full with messages from kids I didn't know from North Carolina, Poland, Brazil, Croatia, New Zealand, and beyond. They were looking to me for help, just as I had once looked to Mystery. There were also 2 emails from Mystery. In the first, he wrote that he'd gotten into a fight with his sister over the hallway incident. She proceeded to punch me several times. I had to restrain her by grabbing her throat and flipping her to the ground. I then left to go back to my house. I wasn't angry. I just wanted to stop her from attacking me. Weird, huh? The second one read simply, I'm cracking up. I'm hungry, my head hurts, my skin aches, and I've been choking it all day to internet porn. I'm going to get sleeping pills because if I stay up all night alone, I'll go nuts. I can't wait to disappear. I'm so close to saying fuck it and ending it all. This living thing isn't fun anymore. He was losing his mind, and I was stuck in Bumblefuck, Ontario, watching Britney Spears and Crossroads with 3 teenagers, one of whom was supposedly now my girlfriend. The next morning, I had Caroline drive me to Mystery's place. Can you stay with me? I asked. I should really get back to Carter, she said. I haven't been paying enough attention to him, and I don't want my mom to think I'm being neglectful. Your mom wants you to go out and be with your friends. You're putting this pressure on yourself. She agreed to come inside for an hour. We walked upstairs to Mystery's apartment and opened the door. He was sitting on his bed, watching Steven Spielberg's AI on his computer. He was wearing the same gray t-shirt and jeans I had last seen him in. There were scratches on his arms from his fight with his sister. He turned to me and began to speak. His voice was cold and dispassionate. I've been thinking, he said. The robots in this movie have motivated self-interest. They set objectives and then work to accomplish them. The child robot seeks protection and is mommy. The sex robot chases women. When he's freed from a cage, he sets out to mate with real women again because that's his objective. Okay. I leaned against a computer desk, pushed flush against his bed. The room was the size of a large closet. The walls were bare. What's your point? The point is, he said in the same deadened voice, what is my objective? And what is yours? I'm a child robot, a sex robot, and an entertainer robot. On the floor in front of his bed was a half-eaten plate of uncooked spaghetti. Shrapnel from the spaghetti sticks was scattered around the room. Nearby were the remnants of a black cordless phone that had been smashed against the floor. The battery dangled helplessly out of the open back. What happened? I asked. I blew up at my sister and my mom. They wouldn't shut up. When Mystery, or any Pua, was in a funk, there was only one cure for it. To go out sarging and meet new options. Let's get peacocked and go to a strip club tonight, I suggested. Strip clubs were Mystery's weakness. He had a list of strip club rules that pretty much guaranteed him at least a phone number every time. Among them, befriend the DJ, never pay for a dance or a drink, do not hit on, compliment, or touch a stripper, stick to your material, and change the subject whenever a stripper starts reciting the stories she tells every other guy. I don't want to go out, he said. There's no point. He stopped the movie on his computer and began working on a half-finished email. What are you doing? I asked. I'm emailing the students in New York and telling them the seminar's canceled. He spoke as if he were on autopilot. Why are you doing that? I was pissed. I'd put a month of my life on hold so we could go to New York and Bucharest together. I'd already bought the plane tickets. And now, because of some mixture of Steven Spielberg and codeine After Effects, he was bailing out. Not enough people. Oh well. Come on, I said. You're already making $1,800, and I'm sure more guys will sign up at the last minute. It's New York, for Christ's sake. No one commits to anything in advance. Living, he sighed, costs too much. It was all too melodramatic for me. The guy was a black hole sucking up attention. Fuck him. You're so fucking selfish, I seethed. What about our tickets to Bucharest? You can go if you want. I'm canceling all shows, all agents, all seminars, all workshops, all trips. I'm stopping everything. I don't want to be known for being a Ross Jeffries. I gave his dresser a mule kick from behind. I have a long fuse, but when it hits bottom, I explode. Though my father may not have taught me much about women, he did teach me that. An orange prescription bottle hit the floor, scattering pills. I picked it up and looked at it. The word Rivotril was on the label. What are these? They're my sister's antidepressant medication. They really aren't about dealing with depression so much as making me sleep. Cold. Clinical. I figured they couldn't be doing much good, so I left 3 in the bottle and stuffed the rest in my pocket. I didn't want him overdosing. Mystery logged on to Party Poker, an online gambling site, and started playing mechanically. The Mystery I knew was too logical to gamble. What are you doing? I said. But I didn't wait for an answer. Never mind. I slammed the door behind me and found Caroline in the front room. Let's go back to your house, I told her. She smiled weakly, sympathetically. She didn't know what to say. In that moment, I hated her. She just seemed so useless. Chapter 8. So I went back to Caroline's house in the suburbs, to her mother and her brother and her sister and her son, and her Britney Spears movies. I could tell I was becoming a burden to her, and a distraction from her son, and she could tell she was becoming a bore to me. It wasn't her constant fretting over her son I minded. It was her complete lack of initiative. The days and nights spent imprisoned in her house, doing nothing, were getting to me. I refused to take time for granted. One of the primary rules of pickup is that a girl can fall out of love with you as quickly as she falls in love with you. It happens every night. The girls who start rubbing your chest and making out with you in a club in 2 minutes will leave you just as quickly for a bigger, better deal. That's the game. That's life in the field. And I understood that. During a workshop in San Francisco, I'd spent the night at the house of a lawyer named Anne. On her nightstand, there was a thin book by a guy named Joel Kramer. Unable to sleep, I picked it up and leafed through the pages. He explained the emotions Caroline and I were feeling best. We have this idea that love is supposed to last forever. But love isn't like that. It's a free-flowing energy that comes and goes when it pleases. Sometimes it stays for life. Other times it stays for a second, a day, a month, or a year. So don't fear love when it comes, simply because it makes you vulnerable. But don't be surprised when it leaves either. Just be glad you had the opportunity to experience it. I'm very loosely paraphrasing, but his ideas reverberated in my head as I spent yet another night in bed with Caroline. I had originally memorized the passage to use as a routine. I never thought it would actually apply to my own life. Love was supposed to be something women chased, not men. I spent the next day juggling airplane tickets and travel plans. I kept my flight to Eastern Europe, but instead of watching Mystery hunt for bisexual slave girls, I decided to meet a group of puas operating out of Croatia. I'd been corresponding with one of them, named Bad Boy, since the day I joined the community. One of the reasons I became a writer is that unlike starting a band, directing movies, or acting in a theatrical production, you can do it alone. Your success and failure depend entirely on yourself. I've never trusted collaborations, because most people in this world are not closers. They don't finish what they start. They don't live what they dream. They sabotage their own progress because they're afraid they won't find what they seek. I had idolized Mystery. I had wanted to be him. But, like most everyone else, perhaps more than most, he was his own worst enemy. When I checked the seduction boards that day, there was one new message from Mystery. Its title, Mystery's Last Post. I won't be posting here anymore. Just wanted to say thanks for the memories and good luck to you all. Your friend, Mystery. I went to Mystery's website, and it had been taken down already. It's impressive how quickly years of work and effort can be dismantled. An hour later, my cell phone rang. It was Papa. I'm scared, he said. So am I told him. I don't know whether this is a cry for attention or the real thing. I feel the same way as Mystery. His voice was distant and weak. My life is going all the way down. All I am is game. I haven't opened a book since school started, and I need to get accepted into law school. Papa wasn't an exception. There was something about the community that took over people's lives, especially now. Before Mystery started doing workshops, it was just an online addiction. Now everyone was flying around the country, meeting and sergeant together. It wasn't just a lifestyle, it was a disease. The more time you devoted to it, the better you got. And the better you got, the more addictive it became. There were people who were quitting their jobs and dropping out of school in order to master the game. Such was the power and lure of success with women. One of the things that attracts a woman is lifestyle and success, I told Papa. Imagine how easy the game would be if you were a high-powered entertainment lawyer with celebrity clients. By getting into a good law school, you'll be improving your game. Yeah, he said. I need to prioritize. I love the game, but it's become too much of a drug for me now. Mystery's depression was affecting not just his own life, but the lives of kids who looked up to him and modeled themselves after him. Some, like Papa, were still modeling him, even in his downward spiral. Everyone who gets too absorbed in the game is depressed, Papa said. Ross Jeffries, Mystery, me. I want Mystery's game, but not at the expense of life. The problem was that this epiphany was coming too late for Papa. He had already signed up for seminars with David X and David D'Angelo. All of it, of course, meant blowing off days of classes. My dad called yesterday, Papa continued. He's really worried about me. All I've been doing is game for half a year while ignoring my education, finances, and family. You have to learn balance, man. Pickup should just be a glorified hobby. It was wise advice. Advice I should have been following myself. After I hung up, I called Mystery. He wanted to give me his motorcycle. He wanted to give Patricia his computer, and he wanted to give several stage illusions he had designed to a local magician. You can't give away the magic tricks you've worked so hard on, I protested. You may want them later. Those are illusions. I'm not good at anything but bullshitting people. I never meant to be a bullshitter, so I'm stopping now. I didn't need to be a high school guidance counselor to recognize the warning signs. If I didn't take them seriously, I might regret it later. I couldn't turn the other way while my mentor walked off a cliff, even if it was a cliff of his own making. I once had a friend whose ex-boyfriend was always threatening to kill himself. One day she didn't respond to his cry for help. He shot himself on his front lawn an hour later. In Mystery's Lounge online, we had a valuable network at our disposal. The lounge linked together surgeons, students, bodyguards, movie directors, fitness trainers, software developers, concierges, stockbrokers, and psychiatrists. So I called Doc. Doc had discovered the community when Mystery signed up on a lark for a dating seminar Doc was conducting at the Learning Annex. Mystery listened patiently as Doc shared tips and tactics that were AFC stuff compared to the technology in the community. Afterward, he talked to Doc, who confessed to not being much of a ladies' man. So Mystery took him out for a night on the town, schooled him in Mystery method, and gave him access to the lounge. Now Doc was a machine, with his own harem of women. His nickname came from his doctorate in psychology, so I called him and asked for advice. He suggested asking Mystery the following questions, in exactly this order. Are you so down that you just feel like giving up on everything? Are you thinking about death a lot? Do you think about hurting yourself or doing something destructive? Are you thinking about suicide? How would you do it? What keeps you from doing it? Do you think you would do it within the next 24 hours? I wrote down the questions on a sheet of paper, folded it in quarters, and put it in my back pocket. This would be my cheat sheet. My routine. Chapter 9. When I arrived at Mystery's place, he was in the process of dismantling his bed. His movements were mechanical. So were his responses. What are you doing? I'm giving my bed to my sister. I love her, and she deserves a better bed. Are you so down that you just feel like giving up on everything? Yes. It's the futility of it. It's mimetic. If you understand mimetics, then you understand that it's all futile. There's no point. But you have a superior intellect. It's your duty to breed. It doesn't matter. I'm going to weed my genes out of existence. Are you thinking about death a lot? All the time. Do you think about hurting yourself or doing something destructive? Yes, this living thing is FUBAR. Are you thinking about suicide? Yes. How would you do it? Drowning, because it's what I'm most afraid of. What keeps you from doing it? I have to give away all my stuff. I dropped Patricia's computer and broke it, so I want to give her mine. She needs a computer. Did she care? No, not really. Was she mad that you broke it? No. Do you think you would take your life in the next 24 hours? Why are you asking me all these questions? Because I'm your friend and I'm worried about you. The doorbell rings. Who is it? Hi, this is Tyler Durden. I'm here for Mystery. I'm a fan of his posts and I want to see if I can meet him. It's probably not a good time right now, but I came all the way from Kingston. Sorry, man. He can't see anyone. He's, sick. Chapter 10. I left Mystery in his room, went to the kitchen, and dialed information for his parents' number. His real-world name was Eric von Markovic, but that was just another illusion. He'd legally changed it from his birth name, Eric Horvat. The phone rang once, twice, a third time. A man picked up. His voice was gruff, his manner curt. It was Mystery's father. Hi, I'm friends with your son Eric. Who are you? I'm Neil, Eric's friend. And I wanted to... Don't call here again, he barked. But he needs... Click. The asshole hung up. There was only one other person I could call. I returned to Mystery's room. He was washing a pill down with a glass of water. His face was red and twisted, as if he were crying invisible tears. What did you just take? I asked. Some sleeping pills, he said. How many? Fuck. I was going to have to call an ambulance. Just 2. Why'd you take them? When I'm awake, life sucks. It's futile. When I'm asleep, I dream. He was starting to sound like Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. I dreamed last night that I was in a flying DeLorean, like the one in Back to the Future, and there were all these wires around us. I was with my sister, and she was driving. We went above the wires, and I saw my life below them. Listen, I said, I need Patricia's phone number. The tears came now. He looked like a big baby who was about to kill himself. Can you tell me Patricia's phone number? I asked again, slowly, gently, as if speaking to a child. He gave it to me, slowly, gently, like a child. I hoped that Patricia wouldn't hang up on me, that she hadn't cut Mystery out of her life entirely, that she'd have a solution. She answered on the first ring. As a girlfriend, she had been taken for granted by Mystery, but in reality, she was part of an invisible support system. Her stabilizing effect wasn't noticed until she was gone. Patricia's voice was a little masculine, with a light Romanian accent. She didn't seem overly intelligent, but she cared about Mystery. There was compassion and concern in her voice. He's tried to kill himself before, she said. The best thing you can do is call his mother or his sister. They'll probably put him in an institution. Forever? No, just until he gets through it. The door to Mystery's room swung open. Mystery emerged. He walked past me toward the door. Hey, I yelled at him. Where are you going? He turned back for a moment and looked at me through blank, emotionless eyes. Good knowing you, buddy, he said, then turned away. Where are you going? I repeated. I'm going to shoot my father and then kill myself, were his last words as he opened the front door to the house and closed it gently behind him. Chapter 11. I chased after Mystery. He was descending the stairs slowly, as if sleepwalking. I shot ahead of him and barred the lobby door in front of him. Hey, I tugged at his sleeve. Let's go back upstairs. I talked to your sister. She's coming to get you. Just wait a couple more minutes. He hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to trust me or not. He was so docile, he didn't seem like he would hurt a fly. I shooed him upstairs with gentle whispers of encouragement. As he turned and walked, I called his family again, using an alternate number that Patricia had given me. He'll be okay, I thought. as long as his father doesn't answer. His sister answered. She said she'd be there within half an hour. Mystery sat on a futon in his kitchen and waited. The sleeping pills must have kicked in. He stared at the wall and mumbled strands of evolutionary theory, memetics, and game theory. The conclusion of his mutterings was always the same, the words futile or foobar. His sister arrived with his mother in tow. The moment they saw him, they went ashen. I had no idea it had gotten this serious, Martina said. She packed him a suitcase while his mother brought him downstairs. He followed passively, dead to the world. They left the building and headed toward a car that would soon take him to the psychiatric ward of the Humber General Hospital. As Mystery's mother opened the door for him, a fourth set of girls poured out of an SUV parked in front of them. For a moment, a spark of life flickered in Mystery's eyes. I watched him, hoping to hear him say those 6 magical words. Is this your set or mine? Then I'd know everything would be okay. But his eyes went dead again. His mother helped lower him into the car. She picked up his legs and moved them inside, and then slammed the door shut. I saw him through the glass, the smiling blonde foreset reflected against his face. His complexion was pale and bloodless. He stared blankly ahead, his mouth closed, his jaw set, his sharp labret piercing, angrily glinting in the cold afternoon light. The girls were looking at the menu of a sushi restaurant. They giggled. It was a beautiful sound. It was the sound of life. I hoped Mystery could hear it. Chapter 12. Mystery's breakdown triggered a crisis of faith and self-examination in the community. We were all submerged so deep in the game that it was fucking with our lives. Papa was failing out of school. A San Francisco Pua named Adonis had been fired from his advertising job when they discovered how much time he'd been spending on Mystery's lounge. My writing had come to a near standstill, and a Pua named Vision had become so addicted to the seduction news groups that he gave his DSL cables to his roommate and ordered, "Don't give these back to me for 2 weeks." Meanwhile, the community was growing exponentially. More and more newbies were flocking to the boards. They were young kids, some of them still in high school, and they looked to us Puas for advice on not just seduction and socializing, but everything. They wanted to know what college to apply to, if they should stop taking prescribed psychiatric medication, if they should masturbate, wear condoms, do drugs, run away from home. They wanted to know what to read, think, and do to be like us. The first person to turn to me for help was Screwdriver, who was notorious online for posting field reports about visiting prostitutes in Tijuana. He still hadn't slept with a real girl. Then came a note from City PRC in Rhode Island. Then came pleas from a dozen others I'd never met. They were all offering me money to teach them seduction. They wanted to fly in. They wanted to fly me out. They were willing to pay any price just to watch a real Pua in action. With Mystery confined to the psychiatric wing of the Humber General Hospital and Juggler so deep in a long-term relationship that he had taken down his website, the students were hungry. And somehow, I had become their new guru. All those posts where I'd shared my routines and discussed my nights out hadn't just been a way of learning and sharing. They'd also been a form of advertising. But seduction is a dark art. Its secrets came with a price, and we were all paying it, whether insanity, school, work, time, money, health, morality, or loss of self. We may have been supermen in the club, but on the inside, we were rotting. I was modeling myself after you and Mystery, Papa said when I called to check on him. I need to be me. I have so much potential for success and I'm blowing it all. I used to be a straight-A student. He planned to go cold turkey on seduction, and for starters, cancel the seminars he'd already signed up for. I'll also stop calling HBs until I get my life in order, he said, referring to community slang for women. If they call me, I'll tell them I need to get my life straight before I sarge them. I choose life. I will not be game. You have to treat school and studying like you treat seduction, I told him. Yes, he said, as if he just had an epiphany. I will make study wings. I will make study pivots. I will fuck close my tests. That may be taking it a little too far, but good for you. I feel free, he said. Whoa. And I'd like to say that's how we all felt, that we all realized we'd become too consumed and came to our senses, that we put our lives in balance and got our priorities straight, that we relegated seduction to a glorified hobby. But there is a concept in hypnosis called fractionation, and it states that if a person under hypnosis is brought out of trance and then put back under, the trance will be even deeper and more powerful. And so it was with seduction. We all came out of it for a moment. We opened our eyes and saw the light of the real world. But then we went back under, deeper than we ever were before, and to an extent beyond what any of us could have imagined. Step 6. Create an emotional connection. Chapter 1. Petra was a 19-year-old Czech with long chestnut hair, a thin golden brown model's body, and no more than a dozen words of English in her vocabulary. I met her and her cousin on the island of Hvar in Croatia with a Seattle PUA named Nightlight 9. We showed them our magic tricks. They showed us their popcorn. On a piece of paper, we drew a picture with a clock and a time on it to rendezvous that night. They met us and led us by the hand to a small, deserted beach. They took off all their clothes except their panties and tennis shoes and ran into the water. We followed and made love to them as they chattered away in Czech to each other. Anya was a whip-smart 22-year-old Croatian who was vacationing with her younger sister. She oozed confidence, sensuality, and good breeding. Her sister was the opposite. Nightlight 9 and I met them on the beach in the Croatian town of Vodice. That night, they slipped away from their parents, and we wandered along the waterfront until we found a docked sailboat. We snuck on board and had sex in the galley. I left 20 euros for the bottle of wine we drank. Carrie was a 19-year-old waitress at Dublin's. She approached me with compliments of dreadlocks. I neglected to tell her I was wearing a Rastafarian wig as a joke. I met her the next day completely bald, but we still ended up in bed together. When I emailed her the next day to tell her she'd left her rings at my house, she responded, "I don't wear rings, they're not mine." Martine was a free-spirited blonde I met in New York, with milky skin, smeared red lipstick, and an iron-on t-shirt. I'd opened so many sets that I can't even remember what I said to her. The next night we went to a bar. I brought along 2 other girls, so she'd have to work for me. For a second, I felt guilty about that, but only for a second. In the bar, I asked her how good she was in bed on a scale of 1 to 10. In my hotel room, I found out. She was a 7. Laranya was a Jap in the body of an Indian woman. I'd met her when I was in college, and we were both interning at the same weekly newspaper. She was the hot intern, I was the shy intern. But when I ran into her years later in Los Angeles, style took her out on the town. The first thing she said when we woke up together was, "I can't believe how much you've changed." Neither could I. Stacy was a 28-year-old anorexic I met in Chicago. During a lengthy email correspondence, she seduced me with her intelligence, candor, and poetry. When she finally came to visit, I was disappointed to discover that she was awkward and ineloquent. She probably felt the same way about me. Nonetheless, I brought her directly to my bedroom, and we began to make out. I put a finger inside her and felt a fleshy cord bisecting her vagina like a tennis net. It was her hymen. I told her I didn't want to be the one to take her virginity. That's when I realized that being a PUA sometimes meant saying no. Greta was an older Russian woman with chiseled features and a great boob job. I met her at a bar in Malibu. She told me it was her birthday, but wouldn't say her age. I guessed 45, but not out loud. As a present, I told her I'd be her boy toy. She grabbed my butt. I told her I charged extra for that. 2 nights later, we had a cocktail and adjourned to my house. She said she didn't put out anymore, that she was looking for something deeper. We had sex that night. We role-played. I was the teacher. She was the naughty schoolgirl. It was her idea. She was a drunk Asian girl with large breasts, surrounded by 3 sober Asian girls with small breasts. I can't remember her name. She thought I was gay. We talked for 15 minutes. Then I took her by the hand and led her to the bathroom. We gave each other oral sex and never spoke again. It was overrated. Jane was an Australian businesswoman, a fellow pickup artist to set me up with. She had spiky blonde hair, leopard print pants, and a voracious sexual energy. When she danced, if you could call it that, every man's head turned. We fucked in her BMW, with the top down and our legs out the door. When I asked her when she'd first wanted to kiss me, she said, as soon as I saw you. No woman had ever said that to me before. Sarah was a 40-something casting agent I met at the lounge of the Casa del Mar Hotel in Santa Monica. She looked clean and radiant, like she had stepped out of a shampoo commercial, even in the harsh light of my elevator, where an hour after meeting, we made love. She kept asking if there were cameras. I couldn't tell if she was afraid of being caught or excited by the possibility. Probably both. Hia and Randy were girls I met at the Club Highlands. Hia was a tiny indie rocker nerd with a boyfriend. Randy was a cute actress with the most mischievous smile I'd ever seen, and a boyfriend. It took a month to convince Hia to cheat on her boyfriend. It took a day to convince Randy. Mika was a Japanese girl I met at Jamba Juice. She was an Orange Tree machine with energy boost. I am an Orange Tree machine with protein boost. I was intrigued. When we had sex, I discovered that she didn't believe in shaving her pubic hair. The next morning, she told me, I grow my hair out because I donated to children with cancer. I was astonished. They wear your pubes on their head? She replied that she'd been talking about the hair on her head. Maya was a black-haired goth belly dancer I flirted with at one of her performances. When our paths crossed months later, she still remembered me. I invited her over the next night. Her car was in the shop, so I offered to pay for a cab. She was there in half an hour. Alexis was a clothing store manager who looked like she should have been in an 80s new wave band. Susanna was a recently divorced designer who wanted to rediscover her sexuality. Doris was a married woman whose sex life had died. Nadia was a librarian who had the skills of a porn star. I guess you can learn a lot from books. All four were the result of an experiment. I tried to concoct the perfect routine for the personals. After several failures, I succeeded. The secret, I learned, was to seem like a selfish prick in the ad, and then to be a fascinating, laid-back gentleman on meeting. Maggie and Linda were sisters. They're no longer talking to each other. Anne was a French girl who didn't speak a word of English. Jessica was a bookworm I met on jury duty. Sarah helped me call a tow truck when my car broke down. Steph was handing out flyers for a strip club on Sunset Boulevard. Susan was a friend's sister. Tanya was a neighbor. My wish had come true. Women were no longer a challenge. They were a pleasure. In the months since Mystery's breakdown, I turned a new corner in my game. Once I'd gotten the number of a woman, it was easy to meet and have sex with her. In the past, I was too obsessed with trying to get some to actually take a step back, assess the situation, and act appropriately. Now, after a year of accumulating knowledge and experience, I had finally gotten out of my own head. I understood the process of attraction and the signals women gave. I saw the big picture. When talking to a woman, I could recognize the specific point when she became attracted to me, even if she was acting distant or felt uncomfortable. I knew when to talk and when to shut up, when to push and when to pull, when to tease and when to be sincere, when to kiss and when to say we were moving too fast. Whatever test, challenge, or objection a woman threw my way, I knew how to respond. When Maya the belly dancer wrote and said, "Thanks for the multiple orgasms. Call and we can discuss when you'll be taking me out for dinner. You owe me for the cab ride, and I feel like being taken out on a real date." I didn't assume she was being a bitch or pushy at all. She was just trying to get validation for having put out so quickly, and testing to see how much she could control me. I didn't even need to think about the response. "I'll tell you what," I wrote. "I'll pay you back for the cab like I promised, and then you can take me out to dinner in exchange for all those orgasms." She took me out to dinner. I saw the Matrix. I was Mystery. Chapter 2. Who is the Best Pua? By Thundercat. From Thundercat's Seduction Lair. Okay, so the debate has been raging for a while now over who is the best pickup artist out there. Obviously, a lot of egos are involved in this assessment, and everyone has their own opinions about who the best really is. In fact, it's so subjective that I don't really think there will ever be a clear and honest answer on the subject. It's like asking who the best warrior or soldier is in a war. But that doesn't stop some people from categorizing the people in our little community as the best. So I've decided to rate the top puas operating out there. Style is definitely, hands down, bar none, the best operating in the game today. This guy is probably the most evil, sneaky, manipulative bastard I've ever seen in operation. The thing is, this guy comes in totally under the radar, and that is why he's so dangerous. His subtlety is so amazing that before you know it, you are qualifying yourself to him, and he has you right where he wants you. And the thing is, he does it with both girls and guys. No one is safe. To give you an idea of how incredible Style is, he's invented most of the techniques a lot of the top guys are using and teaching. He is practically Machiavellian in nature, and is someone I both admire and fear. Chapter 3. It was when I went to Croatia, after Mystery's breakdown, that I realized everything had changed. I was no longer in the game to meet women. I was in the game to lead men. 2 of the Croatian pickup artists I was staying with had even shaved their head in emulation of pictures of me they had seen online. Despite my aversion to being a guru, I had clearly become one. When I talked to a woman, the room went silent. The guys leaned in close to hear what I was saying, pulling out notebooks to write my words down and commit them to memory. On returning home, I watched Ross Jeffries run a variation of my Jealous Girlfriend opener about a woman who doesn't want her boyfriend to speak to his ex from college, followed by a false time constraint. Afterward, he even emailed and asked for a copy of my evolution phase shift routine. He was modeling me, and he planned on sharing these techniques in his seminars. Then Thundercat's PUA ranking came out, and I was number 1. I could no longer claim to be a student. Neil Strauss was officially dead. In the eyes of these men, I was Style, the king of the unnaturals. All over the world, people were using my jokes, my comebacks, my lines, my words, to meet, kiss, and fuck girls. I had overshot my goal. In the old days, I was just Mystery's wing, or Ross's disciple, or Steve P's hypnotic subject. Now I had to prove myself every time I went out. Guys in the community would ask behind my back, how is Style? Is he any good? If I didn't walk up to a group of girls and make out with the hottest one within 15 minutes, they'd think I was a fraud. Before I joined the community, I had been afraid of failing in front of women. Now I was afraid of failing in front of men. And the pressure ran both ways. I also began to develop unreasonable expectations of myself. If I was at an Italian restaurant and there was an alluring woman 5 tables away, I felt like a failure if I didn't charge her. If I was walking to the dry cleaners and an aspiring actress model waitress passed by, I felt like a hypocrite if I didn't open her. And where simply talking to a stranger was enough to elate me in my AFC days, now I needed to have her in my bed within a week. Though I knew my new mindset was seriously warped, I felt more ethical in many ways as a PUA than I had been as an AFC. Part of learning game was not just memorizing openers and phone game and rapport building tactics, but learning how to be honest with a woman about what I expected from her and what she could expect from me. It was no longer necessary to deceive a woman by telling her I wanted a relationship, but I just wanted to get laid. By pretending to be her friend when I only wanted to get in her pants. By letting her think we were in a monogamous relationship when I was seeing other women. I had finally internalized the idea that women don't always want relationships. In fact, once unleashed, a woman's physical needs are often more ravenous than a man's. It's just that there are certain barriers and programming walls to be overcome in order for her to feel comfortable enough to surrender to them. So every part of the pickup is designed simply to anticipate and disarm objections, at least when we're talking about solid game, as opposed to fool's mate. The opener, for example, is casual. It's not perceived as a pickup attempt. You're just being a friendly stranger when you walk up and ask her and her friends, my neighbor just bought 2 dogs, and she wants to name them after an 80s or 90s pop duo. Do you have any ideas? When you start talking to a group of people, their first concern is, are we going to be stuck with this guy all night? How do we get rid of him? So you give yourself a false time constraint. I can only stay for a minute, you tell them as you join their group, because I need to get back to my friends. As you interact, you pay attention to the people who seem most likely to shut you out, the jealous men, the overprotective friends. You make them feel good about themselves as you challenge, tease, and neg the target. If she interrupts you, for example, say, wow, is she always like that? How do you deal with her? If she looks shocked, you reel her back in with a light compliment. This is what I call push-pull, keeping her guessing by pushing her away, and then quickly pulling her in closer. After they're finished giving opinions on names for the dogs, Millie and Vanilli, Hall & Oates, Trey and Snoop, I've heard them all. Then you demonstrate value. You give the girls the best friends test, or teach them something about their body language, or analyze their handwriting. Then you pretend like you have to get back to your friends. Now, they don't want you to leave. You're in. You've shown them that you're the most interesting, fun person in the room. This is the hook point. You can now relax and enjoy their company. You can listen to them, find out about their lives, and make a real connection. In a best-case scenario, you can take the group or your target on an instant date to another bar, club, cafe, or party. Now you're part of the group. You may relax, tease, enjoy, and bond with your target, who is becoming attracted to you after the negging and after leading her group. When it comes time to leave, tell the group you lost your friends and need a ride home. This will give the woman an opportunity to be alone with you without letting her friends know she plans to sleep with you. If the logistics are too difficult, get her number and make a plan to hang out later in the week. When she pulls up to your house, invite her in to show her that thing you were talking about. A website, a song, a book, a movie clip, a shirt, a bowling ball, whatever. But first, give her another false time constraint. Tell her you have to get to sleep early because you have a lot of work tomorrow. Say, you can only come in for 15 minutes, then I'm going to have to kick you out. By this point, you both may know you're going to have sex, but you still have to play a solid game so she can tell herself later that it just happened. Show her around the house. Get her a drink. Tell her you're dying to play her a really funny 5-minute video clip. Unfortunately, the TV in her living room is broken, but there's one in your bedroom. Of course, there are no chairs in your bedroom, only a bed. When she sits on the bed, position yourself as far away from her as possible. Allow her to feel comfortable, perhaps even confused that you're not hitting on her. If you touch her, pull back afterward. Continue using a combination of time constraints and push-pull to amp her attraction. Keep telling her she has to leave soon. Then, at your leisure, tell her she smells nice. Sniff her slowly, from the bottom of her neck to just below her ear. This is when you use the evolution phase shift routine. Smell her, bite her arm, let her bite your neck, bite her neck, and then kiss. Unless she attacks you with lust, as you physically escalate, continue talking to keep her mind occupied and pulling back just before she starts to get uncomfortable. You should always be the first one to object. This is called stealing her frame. The goal now is simply to arouse her without making her feel pressured, used, or uneasy. You make out. You remove her shirt. She removes your shirt. You start to remove her bra. What's this? She's stopping you from going any further? The PUAs have a name for this. Last-minute resistance, or LMR. Back up 1 or 2 steps, then continue. Wash, rinse, repeat. It's not real. It's just ASD, anti-slut defense. She doesn't want you to think she's easy. So you cuddle, you talk. She asks dumb questions like how many siblings you have. You answer honestly and make her feel comfortable again. Then you start from the top. You make out, then remove her bra. She lets you this time. You suck her breasts. She arches her back. She's aroused now. She gets on top of you and starts grinding. You're hard, you're excited. You want her. You lift her off and begin to unbutton her pants. She pulls your hand away. You're right, this is so bad, you agree, breathing heavily into her ear. We shouldn't be doing this. You make out more. You reach for the pants again. Wash, rinse, repeat. But she still stops you. So you blow out the candles, turn on the light, turn off the music, and ruin the atmosphere. Then you grab your laptop computer and check your email while she lies there confused. This is called a freeze out. She was feeling good a moment ago, enjoying your attention, your touch, and the intimacy of the room. Now you're taking it all away. She rolls over and starts kissing her chest, trying to reel you back in. You put down your computer, turn off the light, and return her affection. You reach for her pants. She stops you. She says you just met. You tell her that you understand, and turn on the light again. She asks what you're doing. You tell her that when a woman says no, you respect that, but it just pushes a button in you that turns everything off. You are not upset. You tell her this in a matter-of-fact voice. She rolls on top of you and whines playfully. No. She wants to have sex. All she needs to know is that you're going to call her afterward, so that she feels good about what she did, even if she doesn't actually want to see you again. You let her know that. You tell her, take off your pants. She does. You enjoy yourselves and give each other many orgasms over the course of the night, the morning, and perhaps even for years afterward. One morning, she asks you how many women you've been with. This is the only time you're allowed to lie. Chapter 4. As a community, we had reached a new height of arrogance. I'm starting to feel like I'm hunting rabbits with a howitzer, Mad Dash, a former student, told me. He had just returned from pulling off one of the most unlikely charges in community history. A Chicago office worker named Jackie Kim had accidentally forwarded her highly judgmental review of a date to her entire address book. It was just as shallow as the field reports of some PUAs. So where do I stand on the date, she wrote. The car, the money, the job, the cute apartment, the boat, which, by the way, only seats 6 people, so I really don't consider that really amazing. His mannerism and his great kiss will probably lock in another date. But I can tell you now, unless he cuts his hair and sends me gifts, it won't lead me to seek anything other than my first 30-year-old friend. The post became an internet phenomenon, forwarded around the globe, and chronicled in the Chicago Tribune. One person who received the email was Mad Dash, who promptly sent her a sympathetic response. Jackie wrote him back, saying the email made her day, and she read it every time she received a hate letter. A few emails, an exchange of photos, and 1 date later, she was in Mad Dash's bed. It took no gifts, no boats, no haircut, just pure seduction. Mad Dash's success set off a rash of copycat sergeants in the community. Suddenly, just going out to a bar and bringing a girl home seemed too ordinary and easy. Vision called an escort and paid her $350 for an hour. His goal was to be so interesting and seductive that she would pay him to spend the next hour together. He managed to tease her out of $80 at the rate of $20 per hour. They continued to see each other afterward, free of charge. Grimble auditioned for a television show called Eliminate, in which 4 men compete for a date with a model. He won. He then went on to seduce a 19-year-old girl who came to his door selling magazines. Despite the fact that he was wearing boxers and a dirty sweater, he fucked her within an hour, and he didn't even buy a magazine. After hearing about Mad Dash, Vision, and Grimble's latest antics, any PUA who had been disillusioned with the community after Mystery's breakdown was soon back in the game, full throttle. And the fullest throttle of them all was Papa. Papa's pledge to study for law school had lasted a month. Then he went on a road trip around the country, visiting all the PUAs he could. I couldn't tell whether he was still learning game or just trying to build his social circle. I don't think he knew either. He was simply imitating what he'd seen me do. Travel around the world, meet different PUAs, and become the best. There was one fledgling PUA in particular whom Papa bonded with. A 22-year-old Canadian who discovered the pickup scene when his mother stumbled across a seduction website. He called himself Tyler Durden, after the seditious character in Fight Club. And like a virus or a demagogue, choose your simile, he would eventually change the course of the community and everyone in it. He was a philosophy student at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. Beyond that, not much else was known about him or would ever be known about him. He claimed to have been one of the biggest drug dealers in Kingston. He claimed to come from a rich family. He claimed to have written rigorous philosophy papers for academic journals. He claimed to have been a bodybuilder, but no one really knew. Tyler hit the seduction boards like a hurricane. Before anyone had even met him, one thing was clear. He was obsessed to a degree beyond what any of us had seen before. He read the posting archives, thousands of pages long, of every master PUA in the game. And he was whipping through the list of recommended books, from Introducing NLP to Mastering Your Hidden Self, at a furious rate. He was a knowledge junkie. Within a couple of months, he had consumed nearly every piece of relevant information on seduction and reinvented himself as a self-styled authority, delivering stream of consciousness essays and field reports full of impressive feats and braggadocio. Like thumbtacks to a magnet, the seduction boys were up his ass. He was a manic new voice, an instant do-it-yourself guru. And soon, he was Papa's trusted wing. He joined Papa on his journey to spend FaceTime with every seducer with a silly nickname. And one of them, naturally, was me. Tyler Durden emailed me constantly. He was a persistent little brat, as I suppose I had been. He seemed to pride himself on being a provocateur. Chapter 5. Mystery was back. Number 9, his roommate, called and told me Mystery had been released from the hospital and was staying with his family. He was expecting him back at the apartment the following week, when Tyler Durden would be driving in to take a one-on-one workshop. It was probably too soon to be teaching again, but Mystery needed to pay the rent, and Tyler was determined to meet him. I came out of this strange emotional journey with some incredible cognitive models, Mystery told me a few days later. His voice was Anthony Robbins clear again, his mind lucid. Everything appeared to matter once more. However, something seemed different. He was in manic mode, more so than ever, but it was a new type of manic mode. He hadn't exactly returned. He had transformed. I have my life goals set, he continued. The motivational carrots are all dangling properly in front of me. This year, I will build the foundation to take down Copperfield. I've decided to beat him. I am a superstar. My brain pupated into a butterfly. I asked him if he was on any medication. He said he wasn't. I have given it a great deal of thought, he went on. I only get depressed when I isolate myself. Look at what got me there. The pair bond break with Patricia, no career momentum, and being alone in the apartment with no one to talk to. So we need to design a social environment with people to motivate me. We can all motivate each other. While I was at the hospital, I took a lot of notes on this idea. I showed them to my psychiatrist. Even he was impressed. I'm calling it Project Hollywood. That moment was the first time I heard the phrase, Project Hollywood. I didn't think much about it at the time. I figured it would end up like Project Bliss, another stillborn scheme, consigned into the trash can of mental masturbation. I shine, he went on. I can see this now. I'm a superstar, just like I'm tall. I'm simply a superstar who's been holding himself back. And I'd like you to come be a star with me. It was good to have Mystery back. Flawed though he was, he had a certain charm. Some would call it narcissism, and they wouldn't be wrong, but at least he saw greatness reflected, not just in the mirror, but also in the potential of those around him. That's what had made him such an influential teacher. Dude, I'm already a star, at least in the community, I told him. While you were gone, I was voted #1 pickup artist, above even you. It's insane. A guy from England I've never even met before called the other day and said he pretends to be me when he's fucking girls. It makes him feel more powerful. What do you think of that? It was getting harder to live up to my name. One of our former students, Superstar, a ruggedly handsome teacher from South Carolina, had recently posted, "When I die and go to pick up heaven, Style will be there waiting for me because he is a pickup god." Mystery laughed when he heard it. That's something you're going to have to come to grips with, he said. You created an alter ego that you are. Chapter 6. Mystery wanted to book me for 3 months straight. He planned to schedule workshops in London, Amsterdam, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Austin, Los Angeles, Boston, San Diego, and Rio. But I couldn't commit to the time. I needed to resuscitate my career. There was something I used to do before I was a full-time pickup artist, or, as the kids now called me, an MPUA, a master pickup artist. It was called writing. Somewhere, in another life, I used to wake up in the morning, sit at a desk before even eating or showering, and stew in my own filth as I sat typing on a computer and not getting laid. Now that I was mastering this whole girl thing, I needed to put the other pieces of my life back in balance. All the sergeant was starting to scramble my brain. I was becoming too dependent on female attention, allowing it to be my sole reason for leaving the house besides food. In the process of dehumanizing the opposite sex, I had also been dehumanizing myself. So I told Mystery that I was going to cut back on the whole sergeant thing. I was currently seeing 8 girls in LA. My dance card was full. There was Nadia, and Maya, and Nika, and Hia, and Carrie, and Hillary, and Susanna, and Jane. They had needs, and there were no strings attached. They knew I was seeing other women, and they were probably seeing other guys. I didn't know, didn't care, and didn't ask. All that mattered was that when I called them, they came. And when they called me, I came. Everybody came. What I didn't tell Mystery was that I didn't trust him anymore. I wasn't going to set aside time and buy plane tickets, only to have him break down on me again. I wasn't a babysitter. Trust, I always told women, is something you must earn, and he would have to earn my trust again. It didn't take Mystery long to find 2 willing and enthusiastic wings to replace me, Tyler Durden and Papa. I wasn't surprised. Since Mystery had gotten out of the hospital, the pair was constantly in Toronto, staying at his apartment and vacuuming every shred of pickup information. from his brain. Mystery would call every day to fill me in on their progress. He'd say, "I finally figured out the formula for getting rapport with a woman. Are you ready to hear it?" Big pause. Rapport equals trust plus comfort. He'd say, "When you meet Tyler Durden, don't expect to like him. Only expect to tolerate him. He makes rationalizations constantly. Then why do you hang out with him? He'll call and say he's coming for the weekend, and I just let him. He's like a thorn in my side that gets me out of the house. So should I let him stay at my place when he comes to town with Papa? He's part of the Pua family. Just think of him as the annoying cousin who farts a lot." 1 week later, Papa and Tyler Durden were on my doorstep. Papa actually looked somewhat cool. He wore a leather jacket, sunglasses pushed up on his forehead, and an expensive cotton dress shirt untucked over jeans. Behind him was the palest non-albino human being I had ever seen. A shock of orangey blonde stuck straight up from his ovoid head like a toy troll. His head was cocked upward. His smile seemed like a plastic snap-on attachment, and his features were flattened, as if pressed back by an invisible stocking. Though he claimed online to be an avid weightlifter, his body and face were doughy. Technically, he was a small person. He just had a certain genetic softness. This was Tyler Durden. He reminded me of Heat Miser from The Year Without a Santa Claus. He nodded at me when he walked in. No word of greeting, and a pet peeve, no eye contact. I don't trust people who don't look me in the eye when they meet me, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was nervous about making a good first impression. In his writings, he constantly referenced my posts and techniques. He looked up to me. They all did, but most were humble about it. Tyler Durden reacted to being uncomfortable by acting aloof and arrogant. Fine. Bono from U2 does that too. Maybe that's just their thing. When we went out to dinner, Tyler opened up. In fact, he talked nonstop, without even pausing between sentences. It was difficult to get a word in edgewise. He liked to talk in circles around a point, rather than getting directly to it. He was a victim of a disease called thinking too much. My head spun listening to him. "I was busting on this girl Michelle," he was saying. "I was busting on her hard. Hard fucking busting, dude." And here he'd pull his head back, and purse his mouth, and raise his eyebrows and start nodding. The gesture was meant to convey how hard the busting was, but it looked strange and artificial. Then this dude comes up to her and is like, "Michelle, you were so cute. You were the bomb." And she looks at me and goes. Here he'd smirk and speak in a whiny falsetto to imitate her. "I hate it when guys do that. Now I will never ever like him. I only want a guy who doesn't want me. I hate guys who want me. I hate it." After an hour of blather, I started to understand Tyler Durden. Human interaction to him was a program. Behavior was determined by frames and congruence and state and validation and other big chunk psychological principles. And he wanted to be the Wizard of Oz, the little guy behind the curtain, pulling the strings that made everyone around him think he was a big and powerful master of the realm. I got it. I liked getting it. Now here's the context. He grew up physically and mentally slow for his age, he said. His father, a football coach, imposed high standards on him that he could never meet. This was all the biographical detail I was able to gather. It felt like a lot of hard information coming from him, and I still didn't know if it was true. Every time the waitress came to the table, Tyler Durden wanted me to demonstrate a routine on her. "Do the jealous girlfriend opener," he'd say. "Show me C's versus U's," he'd say. "Do the cube," he'd say. Vision had told me earlier that Tyler Durden constantly tested him for routines and material. He told me that he had kicked him out of the house. Tyler Durden didn't seem to see the humanity in us. He didn't care about what we did for work, where we were from, what our thoughts on culture, politics, and the world were. There was a distinction he didn't seem to understand. We weren't just puas. We were people. Chapter 7. Despite everything, I wanted to like Tyler Durden. Everyone else seemed to. As he and Papa traveled the country, winging workshops with Mystery, the reports of his skills were stellar. Perhaps he'd just been nervous around me. Or maybe he'd improved after being forced to perform for so many students as I had. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. There were trends in the community. Ross Jeffries and Speed Seduction had ruled the seduction boards when I arrived over a year ago. Then Mystery Method took over, followed by David D'Angelo and Cocky Funny. Now, Tyler Durden and Papa were on the rise. The funny thing was that although the methods kept changing, women weren't. The community was still so underground that few women, if any, knew what we were up to. These were trends that had nothing to do with females and everything to do with male ego. I called Ross a couple nights later and invited him to dinner for old time's sake. He wasn't as angry as I thought he'd be, chiefly because his mind was consumed by someone else. Tyler Durden. The guy gives me the willies, Ross said. There's something creepy about his lack of ordinary human warmth. I wouldn't be surprised if sooner or later he breaks from mystery and just teaches totally on his own. He's uncomfortable around people who are more powerful than him. Besides, he's already claiming to be better than mystery. Though I wrote the comment off as more of Ross's competitive paranoia, Tyler Durden soon proved him right. And it was my fault, according to Mystery. The workshops aren't fun anymore, Mystery complained. He was calling from New Jersey, where he was reined in with Tyler Durden and Papa at the home of a Pua named Garvelous, who invented toys for a living. They're just work. These things are only fun when you come with, because then we get to wing each other. I was flattered. The workshops weren't supposed to be fun. As the name implied, they were work. Besides, my goals are changing, he continued. It started with wanting attention. Now I think I'm looking for love. I want to be in a relationship where I can feel butterflies in my stomach. I want a woman I can respect for her art, like a singer or a super hot stripper. The inevitable split came soon after. Mystery flew to England and Amsterdam with Tyler and Papa to teach another round of workshops. When he left with glowing reviews and numerous requests for an encore performance, Tyler Durden and Papa stayed behind to run a few workshops of their own to satisfy the demand. They were on break from college, and teaching men how to pick up women seemed a lot more appealing as an interim job than scooping ice cream or working at the local Baby Gap. Mystery phoned as soon as he returned to Toronto. My father has lung cancer, so he's on his way out, he said. It's strange, but the first person I wanted to call was you. So how do you feel about it? I'm not upset, but my mom was crying, and it's the first time I've ever seen her cry. Dad always wanted whiskey poured on his grave, so my brother said, I just hope he doesn't mind me filtering it through my bladder first. Mystery laughed. I tried to force a chuckle out for his sake, but it didn't come. The image wasn't funny to anyone who didn't hate the guy. Meanwhile, Tyler Durden and Papa were running wild in Europe. At first, they pretty much taught Mystery's material, but that all changed one night in London, when they came into their own in the great outdoors of Leicester Square, ground zero for backpackers, clubbers, tourists, players, and drunks. It was here that AMOGing was born. The AMOG is the alpha male of the group, a constant thorn in the side of Sargers. There's nothing more humiliating than having a lumbering high school quarterback who reeks of alcohol pick you up from behind and make fun of your peacocking gear in front of the girls you're trying to game. It's a constant reminder that you are not one of the popular kids, that you're just a closet nerd faking it. Tyler Durden may have been the biggest closet nerd of us all, but what he lacked in coolness and grace, he made up for in analysis. He was a social deconstructionist and behavioral micromanager. He could watch a human interaction and break it down to the physical, verbal, social, and psychological components that powered it. And AMOGing, or cutting a competitive male cockblock out of a set, appealed to his subversive side. Stealing a woman from the jocks who used to pick on him in school was a taste far sweeter than simply seducing a woman sitting alone in a cafe. So he watched the body language AMOGs used to lower his status in sets. He observed the eye contact they used to signify to girls that he was a creep. He analyzed the way they'd pat him on the back with so much force that he'd lose his balance. Soon he was spending more time in the field studying AMOGs than sergeant women, until he slowly and painstakingly laid out a new social order, where, to paraphrase the musician Boyd Rice, the strong live off the weak and the clever live off the strong. Now, nothing could stop the Puas. They could steal girls right out from under the unbelieving eyes of boyfriends the size of refrigerators. They were stepping into dangerous territory. Chapter 8. When the reviews of Tyler Durden and Papa's London workshop hit Cliff's list, Mystery was outraged. He wasn't upset about AMOGing. You had to give the pair credit for that. He was upset upset because Tyler Durden and Papa had set up their own website and rival company. Mystery had called his classroom seminars social dynamics. They called their infield workshops real social dynamics. Papa was as robotic about setting up his seduction business as he had been about sarging. He copied Mystery's model to the letter. Mystery now charged $600. So did Tyler and Papa. Mystery now scheduled his workshops for 3 nights. So did Tyler and Papa. Mystery started his lessons at 8:30 p.m. and ended them at 2:30 a.m. So did Tyler and Papa. Though Tyler Durden and Papa say that Mystery gave them permission to run their own workshops, Mystery claimed they used his client list and never asked him. When they exhausted that, they went around and spoke to the speed seduction layers, drumming up business from Ross Jeffries' disciples. And when Ross began to smell a rat, they started their own lair in each region, beginning with PLAY for Players Los Angeles Yahoo Group in Southern California. Where Mystery limited his workshops to 6 people, Papa and Tyler Durden packed in dozens. It was Sergeant Anarchy, but they were rolling in money. At nearly every workshop, Papa handpicked a student, even if he happened to be a virgin, and made him a guest instructor at the next workshop. Soon, Papa had his own gang of wings that he was flying around to each workshop. There was J-Lex, a San Francisco karaoke champ. Sick Boy, a square-jawed New Yorker in the fashion industry. Dreamweaver, a college junior and former Mystery student. And even Extra Mask, from Mystery's first workshop. Despite all this, Mystery continued to let Tyler and Papa stay at his house and pick his brain whenever they were in Toronto. When I asked him why, he answered, "Keep your friends close and your enemies closer." With a wonderful cliche like that, I assumed he knew what he was doing. In the meantime, after seeing Tyler and Papa's success, 2 things dawned on the rest of the community. The first was that anybody could run a workshop. It didn't take any special talent to point 2 girls out to a guy and say, "Go approach them." The second was that the demand for seduction schooling was elastic. Guys would throw any amount of money at the problem to solve it. Mystery had made a crucial mistake. He didn't give his students non-disclosure agreements, and now the genie was out of the bottle. One by one, everyone woke up to the notion that all those hours they had spent studying and practicing seduction, more time than they spent with family, school, work, and real-life friends, had more applications than just keeping the prophylactic industry healthy. We were the creators and beneficiaries of a body of knowledge that was light years beyond the rest of the mating world. We had developed an entirely new paradigm of sexual relations, one that gave men the upper hand, or at least the illusion of having the upper hand. There was a market for this. Orion, the spaz who had made the Magical Connections videos, started leading daytime workshops in shopping malls and on campuses. Next, 2 puas named Harmless and Schematic began advertising their own workshops, which was a surprise to everyone, considering that Schematic had only lost his virginity a month beforehand. One of the Croatians was Bad Boy, a charismatic pua who limped and only had partial use of his left arm after getting hit by sniper fire during the war, started a company called Playboy Lifestyle. Students flew to visit him in Zagreb for training in how to become an alpha male. Exercises included punching Bad Boy in the stomach and yelling "fuck you, Bad Boy" as loud as they could. The average monthly salary in Croatia was $400. His workshops cost $850 per student. Wilder and Sensei, both Mystery Method graduates, led pickup workshops out of San Francisco. A mysterious website appeared, offering a book called Neg Hits Explained. Thundercat released an ebook about approaching to help fund the promotion of a short film he had made. 3 college students in London, Angel, Ryobi, and Lockstock, started teaching workshops called Impact Interaction. And even Screwdriver, the border-crossing hooker-fucker, put out a rambling 6-CD advanced sexual attraction home study course that doubled as unintentional comedy. Finally, Grimble and Two-Timer jumped into the fray, each developing his own method of seduction and writing an ebook on it. Grimble made $15,000 the week his was released. Two-Timer took in $6,000. The community was blossoming with enterprise. I realized that it was time for me to move. This was getting too big. The lid was going to blow. I'd been in the community for a year and a half since taking Mystery's first workshop. It was time to stake a claim on the seduction subculture before another writer beat me to it. It was time to reveal myself. It was time to remind myself that I wasn't just a pua. I was a writer. I had a career. So I called an editor I knew at the style section of the New York Times. It seemed like an appropriately named section to write for. No one ever posted their real names online. We called each other by our nicknames. Even Ross Jeffries and David D'Angelo were pseudonyms. Our real-world jobs and identities were unimportant. Thus, everyone in the community knew me as Style. Few, if anyone, knew my real name or that I wrote for the Times. It wasn't easy to get the story into the newspaper. It took 2 months of going back and forth with editors, writing draft after draft. They wanted more skepticism. They wanted proof of the powers of the various gurus. They wanted the inherent weirdness of the techniques to be acknowledged. They seemed to have trouble believing that these people and this world really existed. Chapter 9. The night before the story on my double life as a pickup artist was published, I slept fitfully. I had created this character Style. Now, in 2,000 words of newsprint, I was going to kill him. I was sure everyone in the community would be pissed off that there had been a traitor in our midst. I had nightmares of Sargers gathering outside my house with torches to burn me alive. But no amount of fretting and worrying could have prepared me for the response. There was none. Sure, there was a little bit of belly aching about the community being exposed and potentially ruined. A few people didn't like the tone of the story, and Mystery resented being called a pickup artist rather than a Venusian artist, his latest neologism. But Style's credibility was safe. He had become so entrenched in the community that to the Sargers of the world, he was a pickup artist first and a journalist second. Instead of being upset at Neil Strauss for infiltrating their community, they were proud of Style for getting an article in the New York Times. I was flabbergasted. I hadn't killed Style at all. I'd only made him stronger. Sargers Googled my name and ordered my books on Amazon, writing long posts detailing my career. When I asked them to keep my real world and my online identities separate, especially since I didn't want women I met looking up field reports I'd written about them, they actually agreed. I was still in charge. Even more surprising, I didn't want to leave the subculture. I was a guru now to these kids, and I had a role to fill. I had friendships to maintain. Though I'd more than attained my goal as a pickup artist, along the way, I had accidentally found the sense of camaraderie and belonging that had eluded me my whole life. Like it or not, I was an integral part of the community now. The kids were right not to feel shocked or betrayed. I was one of them. As for the women in my life, the article also had little effect. I'd already told them about the community and my involvement in it. And in doing so, I discovered a curious phenomenon. If I told a woman that I was a pickup artist before sleeping with her, she'd still have sex with me, but she'd make me wait a week or two longer just to ensure that she was different from all the other girls. If I told a girl I was a pickup artist after sleeping with her, she was usually amused and intrigued by the whole idea, and convinced I hadn't been running game on her. However, her tolerance for the community only lasted until we broke up or stopped seeing each other, at which point it was used against me. The problem with being a pickup artist is that there are concepts like sincerity, genuineness, trust, and connection that are important to women. And all the techniques that are so effective in beginning a relationship violate every principle necessary to maintaining one. Shortly after the article came out, I received a phone call from Will Dana, the features editor at Rolling Stone. "We're doing a cover story on Tom Cruise," he told me. "That's great," I said. "Yeah, he wants you to do it. Would you mind specifying the pronoun? Who do you mean by he?" "Tom Cruise asked for you specifically." "Why? I've never interviewed an actor before. He read that article you wrote in the Times on the pickup guys. You can ask him about it when you see him. He's in Europe right now scouting for locations for the next Mission Impossible. But he wants to go to wheelie school with you when he gets back." "What's wheelie school?" "It's where you learn to do motorcycle wheelies." "Sounds cool. I'm in." I neglected to tell Will that I'd never ridden a motorcycle in my life. However, it was high on the list of seduction-related skills I wanted to learn, just above improv classes and below self-defense. Step 7. Extract to a seduction location. Chapter 1. He was the first person I'd met since joining the seduction community who didn't let me down. His name was Tom Cruise. "This is going to be great, man," he greeted me when I met him at wheelie school. He smiled, complimented my adventurousness, and smashed a friendly elbow into my chest. It was the exact same amogging gesture that Tyler Durden had written about in London. He wore black bike leathers with a matching helmet tucked under his left arm and 2 days of stubble on his chin. "I'm training to jump a trailer," he said. He pointed to a mobile home sitting just off the track. "It'll be bigger than that one, but it's not that hard." He squinted at the vehicle for a moment, visualizing the feat. "Well, the jumping's not that hard. It's the landing that's difficult." He cocked his right hand and slugged me in the shoulder. Tom Cruise was the perfect specimen. He was the AMOG that Tyler Durden and Mystery and everyone else in the seduction community had been trying to emulate. He had a natural ability to remain dominant, physically and mentally, in any social situation without seeming to exert any effort. And he was a living embodiment of all 6 of Mystery's 5 characteristics of an alpha male. Nearly everyone in the community had studied his films to learn body language and regularly used terminology from Top Gun in the field. There was so much I wanted to ask him, but first I needed to confirm something. "So what made you pick me for this article?" The dust lifted off the track and blew around us as we clutched our bike helmets under our arms. "I dug your New York Times piece," he replied. "You were writing about the dating guys." So it was true. He paused and his eyes narrowed to slits, indicating that he was speaking about a serious topic. His left eye closed a little more than the right one, giving the appearance of deep intensity. "Now, is that guy you wrote about in your article really saying that the character in Magnolia is based on him? Is he saying that?" He was talking about Ross Jeffries. One of Ross's claims to fame was that he was the inspiration for Frank T.J. Mackey in Paul Thomas Anderson's film Magnolia. Mackey was the character Cruise played, an arrogant seduction teacher with unresolved father issues, wears a headset during his seminars and orders his students to respect the cock. "He shouldn't," Cruise continued. He swallowed a salt pill and chased it down with a long swig of bottled water. "That's not okay. It's not true. Really. That is an invention that PTA had." PTA is Paul Thomas Anderson. "That guy is not Mackey at all. He is not Mackey." It seemed important for Cruise to establish this. I worked on creating that character with Paul Thomas Anderson for 4 months, and I didn't use that guy at all. Later, I researched this. When asked how he'd come up with the character of T.J. Mackey in an interview in Creative Screenwriting in 2000, however, Paul Thomas Anderson did mention researching Ross Jeffries. Cruise sat me on his 1000cc Triumph motorcycle and taught me how to start the engine and shift gears. Then he raced around the track, popping wheelies, while I wiped out going 5 miles an hour on his top-of-the-line bike. Afterward, he brought me into his trailer. The walls were covered with pictures of the children he and his ex-wife, Nicole Kidman, had adopted. "Has this Jeffries guy turned his character more Mackey-ish since the movie?" Cruise asked. "He's arrogant and megalomaniacal like Mackey, but he's not as alpha male as Mackey." "I'll tell you something," Cruise said as he sat down at a table spread with finger sandwiches and cold cuts. "When I did that monologue as Mackey, we didn't tell the audience anything about what we were doing, and the guys just started getting pumped up as I was talking. So at the end of the day, PTA and I had to get on the stage and say, 'Look, man, we just want to tell you that where this character is going and what he's saying is not good, and it's not okay.'" Here came the lecture. First Dustin, now Tom Cruise. I couldn't understand it. What was wrong with learning how to meet women? That's what we're here for. It's how the species survives. All I wanted was an evolutionary edge. So why not work at it and learn to do it well, like I'd done with everything else in my life? Who says you're allowed to take lessons in motorcycle riding, but not in interacting with women? I just needed someone to show me how to start the engine and shift to higher gears. And I wasn't hurting anyone. No one was complaining after I slept with them. No one was being lied to. No one was being hurt. They wanted to be seduced. Everyone wants to be seduced. It makes us feel wanted. We made this whole speech because the guys were taking what we were saying and going with it and getting into it. So PTA and I were saying, "Hey man, oh my God, easy." See, I wanted to tell him, seduction is seductive. But I couldn't, because as he remembered that moment, Cruise let out a laugh. And Cruise doesn't laugh like ordinary people. His laugh takes over a room. It comes on just fine, a regular laugh by any standards. You will be laughing too. But then, when the humor subsides, you will stop laughing. At this point, however, Cruise's laugh will just be crescendoing, and he will be making eye contact with you. Ha 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 heck heck. And you will try to laugh again, to join him, because you know you're supposed to. but it doesn't come out right. It's not natural. He will squeeze out a couple words sometimes, between chuckles. It's not real, in this case. And then he will stop, as suddenly as he started, and you will be relieved. Well, I told him, squeezing out the last breath of an awkward laugh, that's easy for you to say. We spent the next week together, visiting various Scientology buildings. It's no secret that Tom Cruise is a member of the Church of Scientology, a religion, self-help group, charity, cult, and philosophy started by the science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard in the 1960s. But Cruise had never taken a journalist into that world before. The more I learned about L. Ron Hubbard, the more I realized that he was the exact same personality type as Mystery and Ross Jeffries and Tyler Durden. They were wickedly smart megalomaniacs who knew how to synthesize great bodies of knowledge and experience into personality-driven brands, which they sold to people who didn't feel like they were getting what they needed out of life. They were obsessive students of the principles that guide human behavior, but the ethics of and motivation for their use of those principles made them controversial figures. On our last day together, Cruise took me on a tour of the Scientology Celebrity Center on Hollywood Boulevard, where I saw a classroom full of students being trained to use e-meters, devices that measure skin conductance. When curious civilians come into the church, they're hooked up to e-meters and asked various questions. Afterward, the interviewer goes over the results with them and tells them why they need to join the Church of Scientology to fix their problems. Students were paired up in the classroom, role-playing the various scenarios that can occur during an interview. They had large books spread out in front of them. Everything the interviewer, or auditor in Scientology terms, utters, every response to every contingency, was contained in those books. Nothing was left to chance. No possible convert was going to slip through their hands. What they were rehearsing, I realized, was a form of pickup. Without a rigid structure, rehearsed routines, and troubleshooting tactics, there would be no recruitment. One of my main frustrations with Sargent was repeating the same lines over and over. I was getting tired of asking girls if they thought spells worked, or if they wanted to take the best friends test, or if they noticed how their nose wiggled when they laughed. I just wanted to walk into a set and say, "Love me. I'm style." But after watching the auditors, I began to think that perhaps routines weren't training wheels after all. They were the bike. Every form of demagoguery depends on them. Religion is pickup. Politics is pickup. Life is pickup. Every day we have our routines, which we rely on to make people laugh, or to get what we want, or to make someone laugh, or to endure another day without letting anyone know the nasty thoughts we're really thinking about them. After the tour, Cruz and I ate lunch in the Celebrity Center restaurant. He was clean-shaven and ruddy-cheeked, wearing a dark green crew-neck t-shirt that fit his body like a glove. Over a healthy slab of steak, he discussed his values. He believed in learning new things, doing the work required of him, and competing with no one but himself. He was strong-willed, centered, and resolute. Any thinking that must be done, any turmoil that must be resolved, any issue that must be handled, was solved first and foremost in a dialogue between Tom Cruise and himself. "I don't really keep counsel with others," he said. "I'm the kind of person who will think about something, and if I know it's right, I'm not going to ask anybody. I don't go, 'Boy, what do you think about this?' I've made every decision for myself, in my career, in my life." Cruise leaned forward in his chair, resting his elbows in his lap. He was low in his seat, and his head was parallel with the surface of the table. As he spoke, he expressed himself through gestures as subtle as changing the aperture of his eyes. The guy was born to sell things. Movies, himself, Scientology, you. Whenever I criticized myself or made an excuse for myself, he jumped down my throat. "I'm sorry," I said at one point, when discussing an article I'd written. "I don't mean to sound like one of those writer guys." "Why are you apologizing? Why not be a writer guy? Who are those guys?" "They're talented people who write about things that people are interested in." Then he continued mockingly, "No, you don't want to be one of those guys who's creative and expressive." He was right. I had thought I was done with gurus, but I needed one more. Tom Cruise was teaching me more about inner game than Mystery, Ross Jeffries, Steve P., or my father ever had. He stood up and slammed his fist down on the table, hard, AMOG style. "Why don't you want to be one of those guys? Be one of those guys, man. I mean it. That's cool." "Okay, Cruise says it's cool." Case closed. As we talked, I realized that out of all the people I'd met in my lifetime, no one had their head screwed on more tightly than Tom Cruise. And this was a disturbing thought, because nearly every idea Tom Cruise expressed could be found somewhere in the massive writings of L. Ron Hubbard. I discovered this when Cruise had his personal Scientology liaison bring a heavy red book to the table. He opened it to the Scientology Code of Honor, and we discussed it point by point. Set a good example, fulfill your obligations, never need praise or approval or sympathy, don't compromise your own reality. When Cruise promised to send me an invitation for the Center's annual Scientology Gala, I began to worry that this wasn't about an article for Rolling Stone at all. It was about getting another convert to Scientology. If that was true, he'd picked the wrong person. At most, he was introducing me to a body of knowledge I could draw from, like the writings of Joseph Campbell, or the teachings of the Buddha, or the lyrics of Jay-Z. After our meal and study session, Cruise invited me to the president's room to meet his mother, who was taking a course in the building. "Let me ask you something else about that article you wrote," he said as we walked. "A lot of that stuff is about trying to control people and manipulate situations. Can you imagine all the effort they're putting into that? If they took that effort and put it towards something constructive, who knows what they could accomplish?" The interview ended, the article was published, and Tom Cruise and I would meet again. I would be a different person then, but he would be the same. He would never change. He was an AMOG, and he had AMOG'd me. However, he hadn't converted me. He had his church, I had mine. Chapter 2. My church, however, still needed to be built. Tom Cruise was right. All our effort did need to be put towards something constructive, something bigger than ourselves. I had felt after writing the Times article that my work was not done in the community, that it was all leading somewhere. Now I knew where. Project Hollywood, our church of the spread legs. Sarging was for students, not players of the game. It was time to take this brotherhood to the next level. Time to pool our resources and design a lifestyle in which the women came to us. It was time for Project Hollywood. Mystery flew into town to meet me. All he had needed was the word go. He was the only person I could talk to who wasn't afraid to take chances and make changes to pursue his dreams. Everyone else I knew always said later. Mystery said now, and that was an intoxicating word to me, because later, every time I'd ever heard it, translated as never. Now is the time style, he said when he arrived at my apartment in Santa Monica. Let's build this shit. Sarging is for losers. I mean, sure, it's better to be a loser who gets laid than one who doesn't. But we're talking about a championship level of game now. I knew he'd understand. According to the books I'd read on cold reading, all human problems fall into one of three areas: health, wealth, and relationships, each of which has an inner and an outer component. For the past year and a half, we'd been focusing solely on relationships. Now it was time to get every cylinder in our lives firing. It was time to join forces to work together for more than just HP10s. We were greater than the sum of our cocks. The first step to making Project Hollywood a reality was to find a mansion in the Hollywood Hills, preferably with guest bedrooms, a hot tub, and a location near the clubs on Sunset. Next, we needed to hand-select the best in the community to live with us. Perhaps I shouldn't have trusted Mystery again, but this time, I wouldn't let myself be dependent on him. His name wasn't going to be on the lease. Neither would mine, for that matter. We'd find a third party to take the risk and the responsibility. We found that third party living in the Hotel Furama. His name was Papa. His grades had kept him out of law school, so instead he'd enrolled at Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles to study business. The day he moved from Wisconsin to Los Angeles, he dropped his bags off in his hotel room near the airport and took a taxi to my apartment, where a 6'5" Mystery was sleeping on my 5'6" couch. The three most influential people in my life, Papa told us, as he sat down on the couch at Mystery's feet, had been you two and my father. Papa's hair was now spiked and gelled, and he looked like he'd been working out. I left him to talk with Mystery in my living room, while I ran downstairs to a Caribbean food stand to get dinner for everyone. When I returned, Papa was Mystery's manager. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" I asked Mystery. I couldn't believe he was going to let a protege-turned-competitor manage him. "Papa likes the business, and he can fill workshops every weekend," Mystery replied. "So all I have to do is show up." Papa, in his networking mania, was in contact with nearly every sergeant in North America. He knew all the lair presidents and was on all the seduction mailing lists. With just a few emails and phone calls, he could recruit a dozen students nearly anywhere in the world. It's win-win, Papa insisted. Ever since he'd gotten into the pickup business, that had become Papa's favorite phrase. He was smarter than I'd given him credit for. He was going to become the middleman for the biggest pickup artists in the community. And they were going to let him, because most artists have the same fatal flaw. They're too lazy to deal with anything practical themselves. We never actually invited Papa to join us in Project Hollywood that day. It just happened because he was willing to do the work. There was a Coldwell Banker office across the street from the hotel, and Papa walked in and found us a real estate agent named Joe. Real estate agents don't make much money on rentals, but Papa managed to talk Joe into working for us by promising to teach him the game. I began to understand why Mystery wanted to work with Papa. He was one of us. He was a go-getter. He had initiative. And, unlike Mystery, he was a closer. As a pickup artist, Papa also seemed worthy of Project Hollywood. He'd proven his fearlessness in the field over and over since we'd met him in Toronto. And he would prove himself once more the following day when he picked up Paris Hilton at a taco stand. Chapter 3. MSN Group, Mystery's Lounge. Subject, Field Report, The Seduction of Paris Hilton. Author, Papa. Today I went with Style, Mystery, and our real estate agent to our prospective mansion, Dean Martin's old crib in the Hollywood Hills. I'm in love with the place and can't wait to close the deal. We will be on top of the world, literally and figuratively. When you are in our crib, everything seems perfect. It's a short walk to a popular Mexican fast food restaurant, so we went over there for a late lunch. After ordering food, we found a table outside. Suddenly, our agent leaned over to me and whispered that Paris Hilton had just walked into the restaurant. I got up, walked into the restaurant, and saw a hot blonde chick getting salsa. So I thought, salsa sounds good to me. I've been gearing my game up for this moment, and now it was time to take what I deserved. So I walked over to her side and pretended like I was just at the salsa bar by coincidence. I helped myself to some salsa, and then looked over my right shoulder at her and started the conversation with Styles' jealous girlfriend opener. Papa, hey, I need a female opinion on something. Paris smiles and looks up. Okay. Papa, would you date a guy who was still friends with his ex-girlfriend? Paris, yeah, I think so. Sure. I started to walk away, then turned back and continued the conversation. Papa, actually, this is a two-part question. Paris smiles and giggles. Papa, imagine you were dating a guy who was still friends with his ex-girlfriend, and you were going to move in with him, but he had a drawer with pictures of his ex-girlfriend. Not nudie pictures or anything, just regular pictures and some letters. Paris, ooh, I would so get rid of them. I would put them in a box. I cut her off and continued with the opener. Papa, do you think it's unreasonable for her to want him to get rid of those pictures? Paris, oh, for sure. I dated a guy who did that, and I tossed them. Papa, wow. The reason why I asked was because I have a friend in the same situation, and she burned them. Paris, yes, that's what I should have done. Smiles. Paris finished getting her salsa, then took her salsa containers and started to walk away. Papa, hey, you know, you look like a little cartoon version of Britney Spears. Oh, maybe it's just your teeth. Paris put her salsa container back on the table, looked at me, and smiled. Then I told her Styles' C's versus U's routine. Papa, yeah, you have Britney teeth. Well, that's what my ex-girlfriend said. I mean, she has a theory that girls who have teeth in a wide C shape, like Britney Spears, are perceived as good girls, no matter how many guys they hook up with. You have the same kind of C-shaped teeth. Paris, excited and smiling. Oh yeah? Papa, hey, I mean, just look at the smiles of the cover girls on magazines. They have the same kind of teeth. Well, at least that's what she said. She even got surgery done to her teeth because she had U-shaped teeth, like Christina Aguilera. She said U-shaped teeth are perceived as unfriendly, and that's why Christina Aguilera has the bad girl reputation, and Britney Spears doesn't. Paris smiles. Wow. We walked to the counter and she grabbed her food. I acted as if I were going to leave, but don't think I'm going to leave Paris without proper game. She had her food, and she was about to exit the restaurant, so I had to keep her there. I looked over my shoulder and continued the conversation. Papa, I have an intuition about you. Paris. What? She put her food down and looked at me. Papa, you know, I can tell you deep insights about yourself just by asking 3 questions. Paris. Oh yeah? Papa. Yeah, here. Come over to this table. Paris. Okay, sure. I sat down at a nearby table, and she placed her food on the table and sat down across from me. When she sat down, she smiled. I knew I was set, and it was time to work solid game. For the next 15 minutes, we shared some stories about Hollywood and talked about commonalities. I did some qualifying, gave her some speed seduction patterns, and told her some socially proved higher value stories. Papa. Well, my friend taught me this fascinating visualization technique called the cube. He's over there right now, and we just finished shopping for a house over there, pointing in the direction of the Hollywood Hills. I've been living in a hotel for the last 10 weeks. Paris. Oh yeah? Which one? Papa. The Furama. Paris. Nods. Yeah, I live right up the street on Kings Road. Papa. Cool. I'll be your neighbor. I'm moving into a house on Londonderry. It's a great place, and I already have so much heart for it. My friend Style and I are talking about making it a great place for after parties. Paris. Cool. Papa. Okay. Are you ready for the cube? Paris. Yes, sure. Smiles. Papa. Great. Imagine you're driving in a desert and you see a cube. How big is the cube? Paris. It's really big. Papa. How big is that? Paris. As big as a hotel. Though I knew who she was, I didn't give it away and acknowledge she was a Hilton. Papa. Interesting. Okay, so what color is it? Paris. Pink. After I finished the cube, she asked me my name. Papa. Papa, what's your name? Paris. Paris. Papa. Rock on. I feel like we have so much to talk about. We should definitely party it up together sometime. Paris. Yes, we should. Papa. Here. I gave her a piece of paper and a pen. She wrote down her first and last name, and then handed it to me, expecting to impress me and get a wow response. But I didn't give her any response, as if I had no idea who she was. Then I handed it back to her. Papa. Here. Paris. Okay, write it down right here? Papa. Yes. Paris. This is my cell phone. Papa. Cool. Paris. Yeah, we should definitely meet up. Papa. Yeah, rock on. I'll see you, kid. I walked back to see the boys at the table outside and explained what happened. This rocks. I know that this is the way things are going to be. It just makes sense that I would roll with Paris Hilton when I'm in Project Hollywood. Mystery, this is my set. So hands off when Paris comes by the crib to see Papa. Chapter 4. Every word Papa told Paris Hilton had come from me. The jealous girlfriend opener, the C-shaped versus U-shaped smiles routine. Even his delivery of the cube was the exact same as what he'd recorded at his first workshop with Mystery and me, down to the way he said interesting and cool. He was a great robot, and he had just outperformed his programmer. We walked back to the house to meet the owners and sign the paperwork. The former home of Dean Martin, and later the comedian Eddie Griffin, the Rat Pack crib was just above Mel's Diner on Sunset Boulevard. The living room looked like a ski lodge. There was a fireplace, a sunken dance floor, a 30-foot high ceiling, a massive wood inlay wall mural, and a large bar in the corner. The space could easily hold a few hundred people for seminars and parties. There were 2 bedrooms off the living room on the ground floor. Outside each of these rooms was a staircase leading up to another bedroom, and then there was a small maid's room off the kitchen. The crown jewel of the house was a multi-tiered backyard. On one level, there were 2 patios shaded by palm and lemon trees. On the second level, there was a large brick terrace with a peanut-shaped pool, a jacuzzi, a dining area, and a working barbecue and refrigerator. Beyond it lay a landscaped hill with a path winding up to a small, secluded deck at the top of the property. From there, we could see the glittering lights and 10-story movie billboards of Hollywood. The place was a chick magnet. There was no way we could fail here. Papa put his name down on the lease. This, in addition to paying the larger of the rents, earned him the right to the master bedroom, which came equipped with a raised platform intended for a bed, picture windows, and a fireplace. The bathroom was decked out with a glass-encased circular shower, 2 walk-in closets, and a whirlpool bathtub built for 3. The possibilities were limitless. Papa had visions of renting the house for after-Grammy parties, movie premieres, and corporate events. He no longer sarged girls when he went out. Instead, he sarged promoters and celebrities, trying to make connections for Project Hollywood after-parties. He even used speed seduction and NLP tactics to try and hypnotize promoters and millionaires into investing in the house. In his spare time, he made bids for tanning beds, movie projectors, pool tables, and stripper poles on eBay. He wanted to make Project Hollywood a place Paris Hilton would want to come every weekend to party. There were still 2 bedrooms that needed to be filled, so we issued a call for roommates on Mystery's Lounge. The response was terrifying. Everybody wanted in. Step 8. Pump buying temperature. Chapter 1. The first night, we all sat in the jacuzzi from midnight until the skin hung loosely from our bodies, gazing at the palm trees of our new place and the lights of the Hollywood clubs we would soon descend upon. Mystery sang the entire soundtrack of Jesus Christ Superstar to the night sky. Papa told us about his plan to use the house for A-list Hollywood parties. And Herbal, one of our new roommates, served watermelon drinks from his blender. There were no girls, and we didn't need any to validate us. Tonight, it was just the boys. We had done it. Project Hollywood was not just a fantasy anymore. We'll make the house famous with our public exploits, Mystery predicted as we all sat there with smiles plastered to our faces. People will drive by and say, this was the home of the Hollywood celebrities, Style, Mystery, Papa, and Herbal. They built their careers here and had parties that were the envy of the world. Herbal was our 4th roommate. He was a tall, pale, even-tempered 22-year-old Pua from Austin, who peacocked by painting his nails silver and wearing all-white clothing. Like the rest of us, he was a reformed geek, but he owned a house in Texas, a Mercedes-Benz S600, a Rolex, an office on Sunset Boulevard that he never went to, and a robot vacuum cleaner. They were impressive holdings for someone his age. He had earned them in some kind of shady casino operation, in which he hired others to gamble for him. In his spare time, which was basically all his time, he explored caves, recorded extremely catchy rap songs, and surfed the internet for unusual items to buy and then never use. Mystery insisted that everyone in the house have an identity, so we had a magician, a writer, a gambler, and a businessman. It was a combination that would prove more dramatic than the most sensationalist reality show. A few days later, Papa moved a 5th roommate, Playboy, into the maid's room. Playboy was a party promoter from New York who earned my admiration when he told me he'd worked for the Merce Cunningham dance company. He was genetically good-looking, tall and slender with thick black hair, but he had a bad habit of wearing long, artsy scarves and pants pulled up to his belly button. He had quit his job to move in with us, so Papa hired him to work for Real Social Dynamics in exchange for rent. Then there was Zanius. He lived in a tent in the backyard. Zanius was a short, stocky, fresh-faced college soccer player from Colorado who had begged to live in the house. He said he'd sleep anywhere and do anything. So Papa pitched a tent for him, asked him to pay for utilities and house cleaning, and brought him into the Real Social Dynamics fold as an intern. For the first 2 weeks, all we did was marvel at the house. We'd done it. We had beaten the system. We had the most desirable location in West Hollywood, and we had lucked out with our roommates. Herbal had already scheduled a Pickup Artist Summit, the first annual, to take place in our house in a month. At our initial house meeting, we established a structure for Project Hollywood, putting Papa in charge of social activities, and Herbal in charge of finances. Then we laid down the rules. No unapproved house guests for more than a month. Anyone conducting a seminar in the living room has to give the house fund a 10% kickback, and no sergeant women another Pua has brought into the house. All these rules would soon be broken. I initially enjoyed living with roommates, leaving my introverted writer's world and being part of a whole that was greater than the sum of its parts. Every morning, I'd wake up and see Herbal and Mystery pitching quarters into an ice bucket in the middle of the living room, or jumping off a stepladder into a pile of pillows. They were like two kids in search of a playground. I have a feeling that you and I are going to become great friends, Mystery told Herbal one morning. When Playboy threw our first house party, 500 people showed up. We were setting a great example, maybe not to the neighbors, but at least to the community. Within a month, we had franchised. A group of Puas moved into Herbal's old house and christened it Project Austin. Some of our former students in San Francisco rented a 5-bedroom house in Chinatown and held pickup seminars in their living room, giving birth to Project San Francisco. Several college students in Perth, Australia found a house together and started Project Perth, approaching 100 women in their first 3 days on campus. And 4 students Mystery and I trained in Sydney rented a beach apartment with an elevator that opened directly into a club below them. This was Project Sydney. Nobody had understood the potential of this whole pickup community, the bonding power of dudes talking about chicks. We had manicures, we had mansions, and we had game. We were ready to infect the world like a disease. Chapter 2. In my first month at Project Hollywood, entirely by accident, my sexual reality burst open. Just as Mystery's first workshop had opened my eyes to what was possible in a bar, this latest turn of events opened my eyes to what was possible in bed. And it all happened because Herbal wouldn't let me sleep for a week straight. Have you ever heard of a sleep diet? Herbal asked as we sat at Mel's Diner one morning. I discovered it on the internet. In his free time, Herbal discovered a lot of things on the internet. A limousine on eBay he wanted to get for the house, dirt cheap 1,000 thread count sheets for our beds, a new and better way to fold shirts, and a business that sold penguins as pets, though when he ordered a penguin for the house, he learned that it was a joke website. Basically, he continued, it's a way to train your body to survive on just 2 hours of sleep a day. How's that? They did scientific research, and instead of sleeping for 8 hours every night, what you do is nap for 20 minutes every 4 hours. I was tempted. Having 6 extra hours in the day would give me time to write more, play more, read more, exercise more, go out more, and learn all the other Pua skills I never had time to. Is there a catch? Well, Herbal said, it takes about 10 days to adjust to the schedule, and it's not easy. But once you make it over the hump, the naps become totally natural. People say they have more energy, though they also find themselves wanting to drink a lot of juice for some reason. Just like most things in life, I didn't hesitate to say yes. I had nothing to lose if it didn't work, except 10 days of sleep. We stocked up on video games and DVDs, and instructed our housemates to help keep us disciplined. Oversleeping, or missing even one nap, would throw off the entire experiment, and we'd have to start over. As an extra incentive to stay awake, I invited girls to the house each day. I was seeing about 10 different girls now. They were what the Puas call MLTRs, multiple long-term relationships. Unlike AFCs, I never lied to these girls. They all knew I was seeing other people. And, to my surprise, even if it didn't make all of them happy, none of them left me. One of the most important realizations I'd had in the game came from a spiritual self-improvement book that Ross Jeffries had recommended, Mastering Your Hidden Self. It taught me the idea that the world is what you think it is. In other words, if you believe that you need to have a harem, and having a harem is normal, women will agree to it. It's simply your reality. However, if you want a harem, but secretly feel that it's cheating and unethical, you'll never have one. The only woman who wasn't entirely comfortable with this arrangement was a short, curvy, effervescent Spanish girl named Isabel, who had a habit of twitching her nose like a rat in search of cheese. I only sleep with one person at a time, she constantly told me, and I wish you'd do the same. On the 4th day of the sleep experiment, I invited Hia, the indie rocker who cheated on her boyfriend to sleep with me, over to keep me awake. She was tiny, like a chihuahua, and wore large black spectacles. Yet there was something profoundly sexy about her, as if she were just one glass slipper away from becoming a princess. Potential for beauty is as attractive to most men as actual beauty. When women go out with their hair, makeup, nails, and clothing meticulously arranged, it's generally for the benefit of other women. Men, though they certainly enjoy it, don't require fashion magazine grooming from a stranger. We have active imaginations. We are constantly stripping every woman naked, as well as dressing her up to see if she meets our feminine ideal. Hia, then, was a girl who other women ignored, yet every man desired. We saw her potential. When Hia arrived, Herbal and I greeted her at the door with bloodshot eyes, unshaven faces, and dragging feet. The sleep diet was taking its toll. Our manners and maturity were the first to go. We brought her into Herbal's room, sat her down on the floor, and played video games on the Xbox for an hour to keep ourselves awake. When the doorbell rang again, I trudged to answer it and found Isabel standing on the doorstep. "I was dancing with some friends at Barfly," she said, nose a wiggle. "So since I was in the neighborhood, I thought I'd drop by." You know I hate drop-bys. I had always told my MLTRs to call before coming over, in case something like this happened. I sighed and let her in. It seemed rude to turn her away. But good to see you, I guess. I brought her into Herbal's room and introduced everyone. Isabel sat on the floor next to Hia. Her intuition tingled. She looked Hia up and down, then asked, "So how do you know Style?" I had a feeling this wasn't a casual visit, but a sneak attack. So I left them alone in the room and went to find Mystery. I was too tired for drama. "Dude," I said, "I'm screwed. Isabel and Hia are catfighting. How do I get rid of one of them?" "I've got a better idea," he said. "You should threesome them." "You're joking." "No. One of my students was telling me about a technique he once used to get a threesome started. You should try it. Just suggest an innocent three-way massage. See what happens." Sounds like a gamble. I didn't want another disaster, like the porcelain twins' bathtub incident. You're not gambling. You're taking a risk. Gambling is completely random. A risk is calculated. If two girls are at your house listening to you and giving you IOIs, the odds are in your favor that something will happen. Mystery could be very persuasive. Throughout this whole pickup process, I've been trying on clothes and behaviors I'd never thought were me. Some of them worked, so I kept them. Others didn't, so I discarded them. I decided to take a chance. I was willing to risk losing them. I dragged my feet back to Herbal's room. "Hey guys," I told the girls between yawns. "I have to show you these home movies that Mystery and I made. They're hilarious." Inspired by our video of Carly and Caroline in Montreal, Mystery had started filming our trips and adventures, editing them into humorous 10-minute shorts. I brought them up to my room. I had no chairs there, of course, just a bed. So we all lay on the comforter while I showed them the video Mystery and I had made in Montreal. As it ended, I steadied my nerves and took the risk. "I just experienced the most amazing thing," I told the girls. "I went to San Diego and hung out with my friend Steve P., who's a guru and a shaman. And he had two of his students perform what he called a dual induction massage on me. Their hands were moving in perfect synchronization on my back. And because your conscious mind can't process all those movements, it disconnects and you feel like there are thousands of hands massaging you. It was amazing. If you describe anything with enthusiasm and congruence, people will want to try it, especially if you don't give them the opportunity to say no." "Get on your back," I told Isabel. Since she was the girl most likely to be jealous, I knew we'd need to massage her first. I kneeled on her right side and positioned Hia on the left, telling her to follow my movements exactly. When we finished kneading her back, I pulled off my shirt and lay on my stomach. The girls positioned themselves on either side of my back and began massaging me, tentatively at first, then with more confidence. As the two of them leaned over me, their hands tracing circles around my shoulder blades, I could feel the energy in the room begin to change. The sexual nature of the situation was beginning to dawn on them, if it hadn't already. This was quite possibly going to work. When it was Hia's turn, she took off her shirt and lay on her stomach. This time, I made the massage more erotic, rubbing her inner thigh and the sides of her breasts. After her massage, Hia remained on her stomach, while Isabel and I kneeled over her. This was the deciding moment. I had to escalate. I was so nervous, my hands started shaking, just like at my disastrous high school lunch with Elisa. I pulled Isabel's face close to mine and began making out with her. As we kissed, I lowered our bodies until we were practically lying on top of Hia, who was trapped under us. Then I turned Hia's face toward me and began kissing her. She responded. It was working. I gently pulled Isabel into the kiss. Once Hia and Isabel's lips met, the spark of sexual tension that had hung in the room during the massage exploded. They were all over each other, as if they'd been wanting to do this all along. But they hadn't. They'd been bitter rivals less than an hour earlier. I didn't understand it, but then again, I didn't need to. Hia removed Isabel's shirt, and we both began sucking on her breasts. We pulled off her pants and began licking up her thighs until her back began to arch. I pulled off Isabel's panties, while Hia crawled behind me and struggled with my pants. As I helped her with the button fly, I glanced at the clock. It was 2 a.m. My heart froze. It had been 4 hours since my last nap. I couldn't just go to sleep in the middle of the first threesome of my life. But if I didn't, the last 4 days of sleep deprivation would have been in vain. Hey, I told him, I hate to do this, but I need to take my 20-minute nap now. You can join me if you want. With Isabel on one side and Hia on the other, I fell asleep instantly. I dreamed that the streets were water, and I was swimming through them. When the alarm went off, I pulled both girls into me, and we began fooling around again. But this time, Isabel pulled away. This is weird, she said. It's totally weird, I replied. I've been thinking the same thing, but it's a new experience, so I'm just going with it. She nodded and smiled, and pulled my boxer briefs off. Both women put their hands around me, and I leaned back and watched. I wanted to keep the image in my head for future use. However, when Hia began to give me a blowjob, Isabel's body tensed. I remembered something Rick H. had said about threesomes at David D'Angelo's seminar. The experience has to be about your girlfriend's pleasure, not yours. She has to be the lead sled dog, as he put it, and your main objective is to make sure she's always comfortable and feeling good. Is this making you uncomfortable? I asked the lead sled dog. A little, Isabel said. I guided Hia's head back up, and we lay together, talking and fooling around, until my next nap. I didn't have sex with Hia that night. I knew Isabel wouldn't be able to handle seeing me inside another woman. This had already been a big step for her, and for me. The next night, I was even more exhausted. Herbal and I sat in the living room, watching Dangerous Liaison to stay awake, but we kept drifting into daydreams that lasted fractions of a second. These are called microsleeps. Our bodies needed rest so badly that they were sneaking naps whenever we weren't paying attention. The sleep diet was a terrible idea, I told Herbal. Just stick with it, he said. It'll pay off in the long run. Fortunately, Nadia was coming over soon. She was another one of my MLTRs, the sexy librarian I had met during my personals experiment. She showed up after a Suicide Girls burlesque show at the Knitting Factory, accompanied by a girl named Barbara, whose black bangs reminded me of Betty Page. I poured them a drink and we sat on a couch together. Though Barbara had a boyfriend, I noticed that she was very touchy-feely with Nadia. She seemed to have a crush on her, so I thought I'd give her the opportunity to act on it. I excused myself for my much-needed nap. I dreamed I was stranded naked in an endless snow-covered field, and then called them up to my room to watch my home movies. Afterward, I initiated the dual induction massage, and to my surprise, it worked again. The moment they started kissing, the girls devoured each other, just like Isabel and Hia had. So it hadn't been just a lucky accident the night before. Unlike Isabel, Nadia was a lead sled dog with no jealousy issues. When I fucked Nadia, Barbara knelt behind me and licked me. I wanted to wait and fuck Barbara too, but there would be no waiting. What was occurring was so far beyond my wildest expectations when I'd first joined the community that I just lost it. I couldn't hold out any longer, and I never got to have sex with Barbara. This is what the Puas call a quality problem. Over the last year and a half, I'd spent a lot of time working on my appearance, my energy, my attitude, and my state. Yet now, when all those qualities were at their lowest, when I looked and felt like shit, I'd had the most sexually decadent 2 days of my life. There was a lesson here. The less you appear to be trying, the better you do. The next day, Herbal and I sat in the living room with a bowl of ice cubes, which we rubbed on ourselves every few minutes to shock our systems into staying awake. The sleep adjustment process was proving to be more difficult than we had imagined. I began to worry that we were wasting our time. After all, this whole sleep diet hadn't even been scientifically proven. After another 2 nap cycles, my head began to hurt, and my eyes refused to raise any higher than half-mast. We bathed in cold water, we slapped ourselves in the face, we ran around the living room chasing each other with brooms, but nothing worked. When I felt my teeth to check my braces, I knew I'd passed over the edge of reason. I hadn't worn braces since junior high. I'm going to sleep, Herbal finally said. You can't, I told him. If you go to sleep, I won't make it by myself. Watch out for the toothpicks, he said. We both started cracking up. He just had a micro-sleep. Dreams and reality were blurring. Just try to make it through one more sleep cycle, I told him. But after the next 20-minute nap, I couldn't get Herbal out of bed. He refused to even open his eyes. I couldn't continue on my own, so I dragged my feet upstairs and drifted into the sweetest slumber of my life. And though I had failed the sleep experiment, at least I'd reached a new plateau in my game. I know I should be humble about the dual induction massage and pretend like it was another step down a degrading path. But discovering the secret to threesomes was like finding the Rosetta Stone of pickup. Once the dual induction massage routine was developed and shared, puas all over the world started having threesomes. It was like breaking the 3-minute mile. The dual induction massage would ultimately ensure my ranking as the #1 pua on Thundercat's list for a second year running. Project Hollywood was already a success. Chapter 3. And then Tyler Durden arrived. He looked like he'd been spray tanning. I know I didn't make a good impression in L.A., he said. He shook my hand. He even looked me in the eye for a microsecond. He wore a trendy black and white shirt with ropes hanging from the ribcage area like a corset. It wasn't peacocky. It was the kind of shirt I would have worn. Social intelligence is something that hasn't come easy for me, he continued. I think he was apologizing. I'm still working at it. I can come across as self-centered when I slip. Not cool. I suppose I should be more equipped to, as Mystery always tells me, learn how to sarge guys. It was humble of him. He'd done dozens of workshops since we'd met, and I'd been watching his progress online. His students said he now rivaled Mystery in his pickup prowess. I was willing to give him a second chance. Maybe he really had done some serious work on himself. That's the idea this community was predicated on, after all. Since we would both be going to Las Vegas to wing one of Mystery's workshops that weekend, I was looking forward to seeing if the stories about his prowess in the field were true. Tyler slung his bag over his shoulder and walked up to Papa's room. Between Papa's newfound passion for business and Tyler Durden's quest to be the community's best pickup artist, they made a perfect team. Our house now had the best puas in the game. Of course, to the best of my recollection, Tyler Durden had never been approved as a resident. There wasn't room for anyone else. However, Papa had taken it upon himself to invite him, converting one of his bathroom closets into an extra bedroom by putting a mattress on the floor. We didn't have furniture yet, just a collection of 50 throw pillows we bought to cover the sunken dance floor. That night, Playboy rigged his movie projector to show movies on the ceiling, and we all lay in the pillow pit and watched Carnal Knowledge. Afterward, Tyler Durden turned to me. Your archive has been really influential in my game, he said. My collected posts on the seduction news groups had been compiled into a large text file and posted online, along with the archives of Mystery and Ross Jeffries. A lot of my best shit I took from there. It was hard to get out of a conversation with Tyler Durden. Whenever he wasn't playing the game, he was talking about it. I've been experimenting with telling people I'm you in the field, Tyler said. What do you mean? I tell them I'm Neil Strauss and that I write for Rolling Stone. And does it get results? The idea of this pasty little freak running around telling people he was me turned my stomach, but I tried to act nonchalant. It depends. Sometimes they think I'm lying. Sometimes I get girls saying, oh my god, we should hang out instantly. And other girls, if you tell them that shit, you're blown out because it looks like you're bragging. Let me tell you something. I've been writing for over a decade, and it hasn't gotten me laid once. Writers aren't cool or sexy. There's no social proof to be gained by hanging out with a writer. At least, that's been my experience. Why do you think I joined the community? But I'm flattered that you tried. That weekend, Tyler Durden, Mystery, and I went to Las Vegas. Papa had booked 10 students for Mystery, which was pretty good for a 6-person workshop. We took them to the Hard Rock Casino. Generally, on the first night, the students watched the instructors work. As a PUA, Tyler Durden had improved drastically since I'd last seen him in Los Angeles, where he didn't talk to any women. When I noticed him sarging a bachelorette party, I inched closer to listen. He was talking about Mystery. See that tall guy in the top hat? He was telling them. He needs a lot of attention, so he'll say hurtful things to people just to make them like him. So humor him, because he needs help. He was giving away Mystery's game, neutralizing his negs. He likes doing magic tricks to get people to accept him, he continued. So just be nice and pretend like you're excited. He does a lot of children's birthday parties. Now he was neutralizing Mystery's value-demonstrating routines. After Tyler Durden left the set, I asked him what he was doing. Papa and I have developed a lot of new techniques to blow you and Mystery out, he said. So what do you say about me? I asked, trying to pretend I wasn't disturbed. Tyler Durden started laughing. We say there's style. He's actually 45 years old, but he looks pretty young to me. He's so cute. He's like a little Elmer Fudd. I stared at him in disbelief. He was amogging his fellow Puas. It was diabolical. You can get me, Tyler said. You can say I look like the Pillsbury Doughboy. I choked back my disgust and thought, what would Tom Cruise do? But I don't want to get you, man, I replied, keeping my own counsel and giving him a big smile like I thought it was all very funny. Here's the difference between you and me. I like to surround myself with people who are better than me because I enjoy being pushed and challenged. You, on the other hand, like to become the best person in the room by eliminating anyone who's better than you. Yeah, maybe you're right, he said. Later, I would realize I was only half right. Tyler Durden did like to eliminate competition, but not before he'd squeezed every piece of useful information out of them. For the rest of the weekend, whenever I talked to a person, male or female, Tyler Durden was hovering behind me, listening to every word. I could see him thinking, trying to figure out the rules and patterns behind everything I said that kept me dominant in a group. He had studied my archive. He was studying my personality. Soon he would no doubt know more about me than I did. And then, as with the Amogs in Leicester Square, he turned my own words and mannerisms against me. At the end of the night, I saw a two-set sitting at the bar in the Peacock Lounge. A tall, creepy, bespectacled brunette with incongruously large fake breasts and a short blonde tomboy with a white beret and a small, thick, curvy body. That blonde girl's a porn star, Mystery said. He was the expert. Her name's Faith. That's your set. Despite the year and a half I'd spent in the community, despite being supposedly the best, I still got intimidated when I saw a beautiful woman. My old AFC self was always threatening to snap back, whispering that everything I'd learned was wrong, that I was bowing before false gods, that all this game talk was just mental masturbation. But I pushed myself to enter the set anyway, just to prove that little AFC voice in the back of my head wrong. As soon as I opened my mouth, I went into autopilot. I opened with Jealous Girlfriend. I gave myself a time constraint. I negged the target about her hoarse voice. I did the best friends test. C-shaped smiles versus U-shaped smiles. ESP experiment. There's so much I can learn from you, Faith said. We love you, gushed her creepy friend. They were eating out of my hands. I'm a nerdy Elmer Fudd spouting bullshit tests I made up, and these two girls whose collective breasts weigh more than me were staring at me rapt. I had nothing to be afraid of. No guy out there had the tools we did. I must kill off that inner AFC. When will he die? I signaled to Mystery to wing the obstacle. As he sat next to the creepy girl, I went back on autopilot. Evolution phase shift. Smell, pull hair, bite arm, bite neck. How do you rate yourself as a kisser on a scale of 1 to 10? Suddenly, Faith jumped out of her seat. I'm getting too turned on, she said. I have to leave. I couldn't figure out if she was just giving me an excuse because I had made a mistake at some point in the Sarge, or if I was really that good. I approached a nearby set, 2 hippie girls on a bender, and was in with them instantly. 10 minutes into our conversation, however, Faith returned, grabbed my hand, and said, let's go to the bathroom. We walked into the restroom on the side of the Peacock Lounge, and she lowered the toilet seat and sat me down on it. As she unbuttoned my pants, she said, you so turn me on, intellectually and sexually. I know, I told her. How? I felt our connection all night. Even when I was talking to those 2 other girls, I saw you looking at me. She kneeled on the floor, circled her hand around my limp father of thousands, and lowered her mouth over it. But I couldn't get hard. I was overwhelmed. I stood up and pushed her roughly against the wall. I circled my hands around her throat and made out with her, as I'd seen Sin do to women in his house when I was still in AFC. Then I pulled her pants down, sat her on the toilet seat, fingered her, and went down on her. She arched her back, fluttered her eyelids, and moaned, as if she were about to come, but instead she suddenly switched positions and went down on me again. I want you to come into my mouth, she said. I still couldn't get hard. This had never happened to me before. I mean, I'm hard right now as I'm remembering this. I want to be inside you, I told her, in a last-ditch effort to get my blood flowing to the right place. She stood up and turned around. I pulled a condom out of my pocket and thought about every beautiful woman I had approached that night. I started to get a little harder. She sat down on me, her back against my stomach, which was the worst position for a semi-erect dick to reach around. As soon as I was partway inside her, I went soft again. I couldn't figure out if it was the 2 Jack and Cokes I drank that night, the lack of foreplay, the intimidation factor of being with a porn star, or the fact that I'd masturbated earlier that day. When we walked out of the bathroom, half the workshop students were standing there waiting for a lay report. One of the hippies I had been talking to before went to the bathroom and emerged afterward with my condom wrapper and a Kleenex. Evidently, I'd left it on the floor, and she felt obliged to show it around. Everyone was celebrating a feat that hadn't actually happened. I couldn't look Faith in the eye afterward. I had built myself up as such a mysterious, fascinating, sexually powerful guy. And then, in the moment of truth, my eyes had come crashing down, revealing a skinny, bald guy with a limp dick. Chapter 4. On the last night of the Las Vegas workshop, Tyler Durden picked up a hostess named Stacy at the Hard Rock Cafe. She was a vampirish blonde who listened to nu metal. When her shift ended, Stacy met us at the casino and brought along her roommate, Tammy, a quiet beauty with a touch of baby fat and a scent of grape bubblicious. I was wearing a ridiculous snakeskin suit. Mystery was dressed in a top hat, flight goggles, 6-inch platform boots, black latex pants, and a black t-shirt with a scrolling red digital sign that said Mystery on it. Even for Vegas, he looked like a freak. Within minutes, Tyler Durden was amogging him to Stacy. He wears these weird signs and people laugh at him, he told her. I always tell him he doesn't need to do that for people to accept him. The students fanned the room to talk to women, so I leaned against the bar and watched them. After a while, Stacy sidled up next to me. She had been watching me lead the workshop, and from sheer social proof, lead the men and you lead the women, she had become interested. As we talked, she held eye contact with me. She played with her hair. She looked for excuses to touch my arm. She leaned in when I leaned back. All the IOIs were there. I could feel the air around us tingle, as it always does when a potential kiss is accumulating energy. I knew it was wrong. She was Tyler Durden's girl. There's a PUA code of ethics. The first one to approach a set gets to game the target until either she submits or he gives up. But if PUA also doesn't amog his wing, if Tyler Durden was going to tell girls I was Elmer Fudd, then Elmer Fudd was going to hunt his rabbit. I stroked her hair. She smiled. Would she like to kiss me? She would. We did. Then a shock of orangey blonde hair appeared in the periphery of my vision. It was Mr. Heatmiser, and he was pissed. Come with me, Tyler Durden said, grabbing her arm. I started to apologize. What I had done was wrong, and I knew it logically. But when that bubble of connection and passion builds around you and a girl, logic goes out the window, and instinct takes over. I had fucked up. Sure, he'd been amogging me, but 2 wrongs don't make a right. I felt like shit. He would never forgive me for making out with his target. Chapter 5. The point was women. The result was men. Instead of models in bikinis, lounging by the Project Hollywood pool all day, we had pimply teenagers, bespectacled businessmen, tubby students, lonely millionaires, struggling actors, frustrated taxi drivers, and computer programmers. Lots of computer programmers. They walked in our door AFCs. They came out players. Every Friday when they arrived, Mystery or Tyler Durden stood in front of the pillow pit and taught them pretty much the same openers, body language tips, and value demonstrating routines. On Saturday afternoon, they all went shopping on Melrose. They bought the same 4-inch platform new rock boots and black and white striped shirts with bits of rope hanging from the sides. They bought the same rings, necklaces, hats, and sneakers. They went to the tanning salon. We were breeding an army. At night, they descended on the Sunset Strip, a swarm of player bees. Even when the seminar and workshop ended, Students lingered in the clubs on Sunset for months afterward, working on their game. You could spot them from behind by the matching boots and the rope dangling from their shirts.
Hey.
Clustered in groups, prowling for open sets and sending in emissaries to say, hey, I need to get a female opinion on something.
Okay.
Even on nights when there weren't workshops, badly peacock guys from a 100-mile radius gathered in our living room before going out. At 2:30 a.m., they reconvened at the house, either accompanied by drunk, giggling girls from Orange County they brought to the jacuzzi, the terrace, the closets, or the pillow pit, or they returned empty-handed and broke down their approaches until dawn. They couldn't stop talking about this stuff. Maybe the reason I'm not getting into a lot of relationships, Tyler Durden said one afternoon as he popped out in the booth at Mel's next to me, is that I don't like oral sex, giving or receiving. That's when I realized that Tyler Durden wasn't in the community to get laid. He wasn't motivated by sex. He was motivated by power. Papa's motivations were harder to determine. Originally, he was in the game for girls. When we moved into Project Hollywood, he envisioned turning his room into a high-tech sultan's lair, with a harem just a phone call away. He talked about getting a bed like a throne, a high-end home entertainment center, a bar next to the fireplace, and drapery hanging from the ceiling. But that's not what his room became. When I returned from Mel's with Tyler, Mystery was in Papa's room, arguing. You're giving Tyler Durden more students than you're giving me, Mystery was saying. I'm trying to make this win-win for everyone, Papa protested. The expression seemed hollower every time he used it. As I looked around his room, I was appalled. There was hardly any furniture, just sleeping bags and pillows strewn across the floor. I didn't have one word for better deal breaker. Who's living here, I asked. Some of the RSD guys, he replied, using the acronym for Real Social Dynamics. How many people? Well, right now, Tyler Durden and Sick Boy are in the closets of my bathroom, and I have 3 boot camp students sleeping in the room. Well, if anyone's staying more than a month, they need to be approved, like we agreed at the house meeting. There are enough guys in the house as it is. Outstanding, Papa said. If they're using the resources of the house, they should be paying, Mystery said. Papa looked at him blankly. I can't talk to that guy. Mystery threw up his hands and complained to me. He just sits there and stares at you and says outstanding. He's so fucking passive. It's not true, Papa said. You think you can push me around because I was a former student. I'd never seen Papa upset before. He didn't get loud like most people. Instead, his voice became very stuffy. Somewhere inside, there was a living, breathing, emotional person waiting to be set free. After that day, Papa stopped entering the house through the front door. Instead, in order to avoid Mystery, he walked all the way around the back to the patio and climbed a staircase that led to a door in his bathroom. All his guests did the same. Chapter 6. My father died when I was 40, and I couldn't find a way to cry. Not because I didn't love him, not because he didn't try. The lyrics boomed through the living room. Mystery was lying in the pillow pit with his computer on his chest. He was playing the song Randall Hunting Knife by Guy Clark over and over. He seemed to be in need of attention, so I walked over and gave him some. My dad died, he said. His voice was flat and even. It was hard to tell if he was sad or not. It's about time. It happened very quickly. He had another stroke, and then he died at 10 a.m. today. I sat down next to him and listened to him talk. He was a passive observer of himself, analytically deconstructing his emotions as he felt them. Even though I was ready for it, it's strange. It's like when Johnny Cash died. You knew it was going to happen, but it was still a shock. Mystery had hated his dad his whole life and wished death on him countless times. But now that it had happened, he didn't know how to feel. He seemed confused that he felt a little sad, despite himself. The only times we ever bonded were when a hot woman came on TV, he said. Then he'd look at me, and I'd look at him, and we'd quietly appreciate it together. A few days later, we hosted the first annual Pickup Arts Summit at our house. Who's from around the world flew in to speak, and several hundred RAFCs, recovering average frustrated chumps, gathered in our living room to hear them. Our housemates Playboy and Zanius, who Papa and Tyler Durden had been training to become instructors, opened the proceedings. As Playboy discussed body language, I thought back to Belgrade and the first I thought with mystery. I remembered the exotic option. Sasha scooping down the street in his first email clothes, and Jerry so secure. I loved those guys. I cared about them. I wanted them to get laid. I emailed them for months afterward, checking on their progress. Now I looked around the living room and saw neediness and hunger and desperation. Bald guys with goatees, miniature and supersized versions of myself, asked me to pose for photos with them. Good-looking